Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales. Chapter 4085. When Kang Xinmu devoured all the natural treasures, his body was full of talent power, and his cultivation kept growing. Soon, he reached the peak of the 8th tier of the divine martial realm. If these natural treasures were in the Yen Dragon Empire, he would be able to exchange them for at least 2 or 3 grade 2 dragon martial techniques. Hence, they were extremely rare and precious. It was normal for them to allow him to improve so much. In 5 days, he had devoured all the treasures of heaven and earth. At this time, Heaven Awakening Rock Dragon returned with the special natural treasures needed to cultivate the chaotic dragon body. 13 special natural treasures, corresponding to 13 different attributes. Of the 13 natural treasures that I can find, only the ancient green lotus is a high-grade wood attribute treasure. The other 12 natural treasures are only ordinary treasures. Their effects are not very good. However, Master, when you obtain other high-grade treasures in the future, you can consume them to cultivate the chaotic dragon body. Heaven Awakening Rock Dragon offered the 13 natural treasures. Jiang Shenwu nodded his head. That was what he had thought as well. Now that he had obtained an ancient green lotus, he could already be considered quite lucky. In that case, I will accept it. Kang Xinmu put away the 13 natural treasures. He did not plan to cultivate here. I'll go back first. Continue to collect the heavenly resources. If I'm not wrong, this will be the last time you collect heavenly resources in the Heaven Awakening Demon Realm. After collecting so many heavenly resources, there won't be any heavenly resources left in the Heaven Awakening Demon Realm, right? Yi Futian asked. Yes, my master is wise. Heaven Awakening Rock Dragon was a little surprised by Yi Futian's keen observation skills, but he did not say much. He quickly bowed and praised. Alright, send me back first. Kang Xinmu waved his hand. He could not be bothered to say anything more. The natural treasures here would be used up in a month. But by then, Kang Xinmu should be ready to break through to the Nirvana Tribulation Realm. By then, the war with Northern Chill Dragon Country should be coming to an end. At the very least, the fight in the Dragon Sealing Abyss would not involve Dragon Ice City. Also, if the war was almost over, Dragon Emperor Yen should be meeting him, right? Kang Xinmu didn't think too much about it. After coming out of the gate of time and space, he reappeared in the layer of magma. He swallowed the rocks and soil above him as fast as he could and soon saw the layer of ice. Immediately after, he dug a path of ice and quickly approached the surface. After leaving the ice layer, Kang Xinmu did not see anyone nearby. Therefore, he quickly returned to Dragon Ice City and prepared to use the 13 special herbs to brew the body-tempering medicine in preparation to cultivate the chaotic dragon body. The very beginning of cultivating the chaotic dragon body required 13 kinds of special herbs of different attributes. After completely absorbing them, the dragon warrior would be able to achieve the chaotic dragon body and increase their resistance to various powers. After that, if one wanted to cultivate and improve it, one of the ways was to find better medicinal herbs with special attributes and swallow them. Another way was to be like the other body refining dragon martial skills. After continuously getting injured and then healing, one would be able to raise the level of this body refining dragon martial skill. Naturally, it would start with the human level, then the earth level, then the dragon level, and finally the heaven level. Of course, these two ways of improvement could be overlapped. In other words, while continuously improving his cultivation level, he could also use the special herbs to improve himself. If all 13 kinds of herbs were exchanged for high-grade treasures, Kang Xinmu's defense would be improved by a large margin. Even above the high-grade treasures, there were special treasures, or even super treasures that surpassed the existence of this dragon martial continent. That was something that he could not obtain at the moment. The chaotic dragon body is not only useful now. Even if I leave the dragon martial continent in the future and go to the starry sky where the origin divine dragon is, it will still be useful. Kang Xinmu thought to himself. Inside Dragon Ice City. In an inn, Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue were practicing the second-grade dragon martial technique that they had chosen. At the same time, they were taking all kinds of cultivation elixirs. When Kang Xinmu returned, the two girls had already reached the 7th tier of the divine martial realm. This speed could not be said to be slow. It was all because they had a huge amount of merit points, and they had exchanged them for high-quality cultivation elixirs, which allowed them to improve at the fastest speed. As for Kang Xinmu, he did not need to exchange for cultivation elixirs. Although the effects of the heavenly treasures in the heaven-opening demon realm were not as good as cultivation elixirs, they were more precious. Moreover, Kang Xinmu's devouring power could completely absorb the medicinal properties of the heavenly treasures. If it were someone else, even if they had obtained the same amount of heavenly treasures as Kang Xinmu, they would not be able to directly absorb them without refining them into cultivation elixirs. If one really wanted to directly absorb them, the effect would not be as good as some second-grade treasures or cultivation elixirs. Therefore, the method of directly absorbing heavenly treasures to improve was limited to Kang Xinmu alone. When he returned, he immediately started decocting 13 kinds of special medicinal herbs. Under normal circumstances, he would need to immerse himself in the medicinal herbs for several days or even dozens of days until his body completely absorbed the medicinal properties. However, for Jiang Xinwu, he only needed to use his devouring power to continuously devour the medicine that was brewed from the fusion. The power contained in the medicine would naturally fuse with his blood vessels, tendons, and bones. He only needed to use the cultivation method of the chaotic dragon body to fuse the power of the medicinal herbs and disperse it to every part of his body. Then, he would be able to quickly cultivate the chaotic dragon body. 3 days passed very quickly. As Kang Xinmu walked out of his room in the inn, he seemed to have undergone a huge change. His eyes seemed to emit a primordial aura that contained the power of chaos. He had successfully cultivated the chaotic dragon body. Now that I have successfully cultivated the chaotic dragon body, my usual defense is equivalent to activating the martial dragon divine shield. This effect is really terrifying. When he arrived outside Dragon Ice City, he transformed into a black dragon and gave it a try. He discovered that the surface of his divine dragon body was already covered with a layer of chaotic energy. The primordial aura made his defense impenetrable. This is going to be troublesome. Kang Xinmu smiled bitterly. He had originally planned to let Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue help him cultivate the chaotic dragon body to a higher level. However, it seemed like the two girls could not break through his defense at all. It would be even more difficult for them to seriously injure him. However, that was referring to Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue in the past. I wonder how their cultivation is going. After all, they have obtained so many merit points. Their strength must have increased significantly. Perhaps they can even injure me now. Chapter 4086. The fight for the dragon's sealing abyss was still in full swing. However, since the target had been exposed, the northern Chill Dragon country no longer sent dragon warriors to harass and distract them. Instead, they concentrated their forces near the dragon's sealing abyss. Thus, there were basically no more dragon warriors from the northern Chill Dragon country causing trouble in the Dragon Ice region. Kang Xinmu brought Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue to the wasteland outside Dragon Ice City, preparing to continue improving his chaotic dragon body. At this time, the two girls had reached a bottleneck in their cultivation of their dragon skills. If they did not fight, they would not be able to improve. Thus, Kang Xinmu inviting them out was exactly what they wanted. Even if Kang Xinmu did not call them out, they would probably soon head to places like the Dragon Ice Canyon to kill monsters and train. Since there was a live target like Kang Xinmu, they could not be bothered to go so far. Kang Shinmu, are you sure you can withstand our combined attacks? The two girls asked doubtfully when they arrived at a secluded valley. That's right. Just attack with all your might. Kang Shinmu nodded solemnly. Then we're coming. The two girls looked at each other and nodded. They each transformed into a Sky Mysterious Jade Fire Dragon and a 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Dragon. Then, they each used the Grade 2 offensive dragon skills that they had just cultivated and swept toward Kang Shinmu. A stream of ice and a stream of flame merged into one, transforming into a spiral force that landed on the pitch-black divine dragon that Jiang Shenwu had just transformed into. Originally, the two girls were still a little nervous and did not use their full strength. However, when their attacks landed on Kang Shinmu, they were like scattered fireworks. They were completely blocked, and Kang Shinmu's black dragon body was not injured at all. This was the power of a Grade 1 body-tempering dragon skill, which was also the power of the Source Dragon skill. Although it was the lowest grade origin dragon martial technique, it was the result of successfully cultivating it for everyone on this continent. This was the Chaos Dragon Body's Origin Dragon Martial Technique Secret Manual. It was also the only one in the entire Fire Dragon Empire, and no one had ever cultivated it. Now that Jiang Shenwu had successfully cultivated it, there was no doubt that he had become a well-known figure among the dragon martial artists of the same cultivation realm. Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue exchanged glances and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Originally, they thought that now that they had cultivated the Grade 2 dragon martial skill, the strength of their attacks had increased a lot. Even Kang Shinmu would not be able to completely block their attacks. But now, they were unable to break through Kang Shinmu's defense even after joining forces. This made them even more aware that while they were improving, Kang Shinmu was probably improving even more during this process. Again. This stimulated the competitive spirit in the hearts of the two girls. They were very confident in their own talent, and they were even more clear about the power of the Grade 2 dragon martial technique. They immediately attacked with all their strength. The ice and fire merged into one, and they attacked Kang Shinmu from mid-air. Even the surrounding glaciers melted. Waves of ice broke through the ground and the mountain walls on both sides, turning into pieces of ice that rained down from the sky. And in the midst of the icy rain, the most terrifying thing was the impact of the fusion of power. This was a joint attack method that the two girls had discovered while cultivating. The Grade 2 dragon martial technique that they had cultivated could be fused together in a certain way to increase its power. Now, the effect was evident. When they attacked with their full strength, the two forces transformed into a terrifying god of death, causing a wound to appear on Jiang Shenwu's black dragon body. Blood immediately spurted out, and the black dragon body was smashed into the ice surface of the valley by the astonishing force, smashing open a huge crater in the ice. Not only was Kang Shinmu not surprised, he even laughed out loud, "Ha, it's good that you can injure me." Previously, he was afraid that the two girls would not be able to injure him even if they joined forces. Now, it seemed that the two girls had cultivated their joint attack method quite well. When the power of the fusion attack was fused, they could actually injure Kang Shinmu. This was a pleasant surprise for Kang Shinmu. Since that was the case, he could start cultivating the Chaos Dragon body. The cultivation of the Source Dragon martial technique was definitely much more difficult than the other dragon martial techniques. As the three of them continued to fight in the valley, more and more wounds appeared on Kang Shinmu's body. However, he quickly recovered by devouring the Heavenly Phase Demon Cores. He had left behind quite a number of Heavenly Phase Demon Cores, and now he could use them to cultivate the Chaos Dragon body. As he was constantly injured and recovering, his Chaos Dragon body was also constantly improving. At the same time, the two girls' cultivation of their Grade 2 dragon martial techniques were also constantly improving. At the beginning, they were only at the human rank, but after 7 days, they had already reached the Earth rank. For them, they only needed to continuously use their dragon martial techniques to attack Kang Shinmu. This kind of hardy attack was the best way for them to quickly improve their dragon martial techniques. Compared to them, Kang Xinmu's improvement was very slow. Even after 7 days of attacking, his Chaos Dragon body did not have any obvious improvement. Based on this efficiency, it would probably take him 2 months to upgrade his Chaos Dragon body to the Earth rank. Following that, Kang Xinmu and the two girls practiced their dragon martial techniques in the secluded valley. The entire secluded valley was deserted. However, the surrounding mountain walls were constantly being destroyed by the three of them as they fought. The ground was also full of potholes and ice pits were everywhere. It was as if the entire snow valley had experienced a war. However, Kang Xinmu and the others did not care. In such an extremely cold valley, as long as they did not come for a few days, it would quickly return to its original state. They also did not need to worry about being discovered. If the heavenly demon's demon core in Kang Xinmu's body was used up, they would go to the nearby Dragon Ice Canyon to hunt some heavenly demons and obtain their demon cores. For them, it was obviously not that easy to obtain a heavenly demon's demon core. It was impossible to obtain a few at once. However, when they were hunting demonic beasts, the three of them were also practicing their own dragon martial techniques. 2 months later, in the secluded valley, Kang Xinmu's Chaos Dragon body finally upgraded from the human rank to the Earth rank. If not for the fact that the two girls had practiced their Grade 2 dragon martial techniques from the Earth rank to the Dragon rank, even if they joined hands, they would not be able to hurt Kang Xinmu. Moreover, during this period, Kang Xinmu's cultivation realm had also made a breakthrough. He finally stepped into the 9th level of the Divine Martial Realm. He had reached the peak of the Divine Martial Realm and was preparing to cross the Nirvana Tribulation. Now, Kang Xinmu could fight against 10 dragon martial artists of the same realm, and the other party could not do anything. Because Kang Xinmu had practiced the Chaos Dragon body, his defense was extremely terrifying. Chapter 4087. In these 2 months, Kang Xinmu did not return to the Heaven Awakening Demon realm, because he was still a long way from the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Moreover, it was not something that could be made up for with natural treasures, so there was no need to go back. When the chaotic dragon body was upgraded to the Earth level, Kang Xinmu could almost be said to have entered a golden body state. Martial practitioners who had not reached the Nirvana Tribulation realm could not break his defense in any case, unless the other party also practiced a Grade 1 dragon martial skill, which was the dragon martial skill. However, in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, dragon warriors who practiced a Grade 1 dragon martial skill were at least Nirvana Tribulation realm geniuses. Apart from Kang Xinmu, no one in the God martial realm was qualified to practice a Grade 1 dragon martial skill. Not to mention that they had practiced it to the Earth level. After these 2 months, Kang Xinmu's strength could be said to have been greatly improved, and after reaching the 9th level of the God martial realm, his devouring power had also reached the peak, and his devouring power was even more terrifying. Using the devouring power to devour opponents and recover himself, the efficiency had become extremely terrifying. As for Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue, both of them were now in the 7th level of the God martial realm, and they had already practiced a Grade 2 dragon martial skill and had dragon-level dragon weapons. They were already much stronger than when they had left the dragon prison domain. At this time, the fight for the dragon sealing abyss had finally come to an end. Because of the sudden attack by the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty at the beginning, which caused the northern Chill Dragon country to suffer heavy losses, and after that, they could not organize a very orderly counterattack. As a result, after 2 months, the northern Chill Dragon country completely gave up on the dragon sealing abyss and handed it over to the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. At this point, the dragon sealing abyss had become a resource of the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. The Yen Dragon Emperor should soon issue an order to let some of the more meritorious or talented dragon warriors go to the dragon sealing abyss and be baptized by the mysterious power of the dragon sealing abyss. Even Dragon Emperor Yen didn't know what that mysterious power was, but he knew that it wasn't harmful to dragon warriors. The war was basically over. The Xia family mansion in Dragon Prison City had been completely wiped out. No matter where one was, betrayal was something unbearable to those in power. Moreover, Kang Xinmu knew that even divine dragon Xia Yan had died in the imperial palace of the Yan Dragon Emperor dynasty. He had no chance of escaping. Kang Xinmu and the others finally decided to leave Dragon Ice City and return to the Dragon Prison Domain. After another half a month, they finally returned to the Dragon Prison Domain. Everyone in the Shi clan residence came out to welcome them under the lead of Holy Dragon Shi Tao. When they found out that Kang Xinmu had reached the 9th level of the Divine Martial Realm in such a short time, and even Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue had reached the 7th level, they couldn't help but be shocked. Even the sacred dragon Shi Tao hadn't improved so quickly in the past. After welcoming all of them back, the Shi clan residents had a good celebration. Jiang Liuxue had a good relationship with Shi Yueying, so they invited Jiang Liuxue to stay in the Shi clan residence. Jiang Liuxue agreed, but she needed to return to the Jiang clan to bring her parents over. After all, she couldn't leave alone. If she stayed in the Shi clan residence in Dragon Prison City, her parents' lives would be much better. As for Kang Xinmu, he chatted with the sacred dragon Shi Tao. They talked about Jiang Zizai. After all, the sacred dragon Shi Tao knew that Kang Xinmu's main purpose was to find Jiang Zizai, but he encountered a war midway and was delayed for so long. Kang Xinmu thought about it and didn't tell him what he had seen and heard in the sealed dragon abyss. Even with the sacred dragon Shi Tao's status and strength, it was impossible for him to be of any help in rescuing Jiang Zizai. The seal in the sealed dragon abyss was not something that the dragon warriors of the Dragon Martial Continent could break. The ancestral dragon was still too far away for Kang Xinmu. It was enough for him to know about it. There was no need to tell others. As a result, Kang Xinmu could only tell Shi Tao that he hadn't found Jiang Zizai's whereabouts. Kang Xinmu didn't plan on telling anyone about the sealed dragon abyss and the ancestral dragon. Not only was it useless to tell them, but it could also bring disaster to them. The news of Kang Xinmu and the others' return quickly spread to the surroundings of Dragon Prison City. Some people were happy, while others were worried. The Jiang tribal clan naturally benefited from Kang Xinmu's great achievements. The Yan Dragon Emperor's court had already sent people to get the Dragon King to provide the Jiang tribal clan with more cultivation resources. In addition, Kang Xinmu had obtained first place in the clan tournament. Soon, the Jiang tribal clan would be able to produce more powerful dragon warriors with more resources. However, the Meng tribal clan, the Zhang tribal clan, and the Gu tribal clan were related to the Xia clan. This caused the Dragon King's impression of them to be greatly reduced. The inclination of many cultivation resources made the three strongest tribes in the Dragon Prison Domain extremely uncomfortable. Not only did the younger generation of these three tribes not have enough cultivation resources to improve, even the originally stronger dragon warriors of these three tribes had become extremely dispirited because of the order of the enslaved Dragon King. If they wanted to improve again, it would be much more difficult than before. Kang Xinmu did not pay attention to these things. They happened naturally. After all, the sacred dragon Xia Yan had taken the lead in betraying the Yan Dragon Emperor's court. This was a serious matter. If he was not severely punished, there would probably be more such incidents in the future. Because of their good relationship with Kang Xinmu, and the fact that Jiang Liuxue and Shi Yueying had exposed the sacred dragon Xia Yan's betrayal in this war, the Yan Dragon Emperor's upper echelons began to think more highly of the Shi clan. The benefit of this was that the Shi clan would enter a period of rapid development. As a result, the other two sacred dragon warriors in the Dragon Prison Domain were jealous of the sacred dragon Shi Tao. The destruction of the Xia clan and the rise of the Shi clan made the other two sacred dragon warriors feel threatened. If they were allowed to continue developing, it was very likely that Dragon Prison City would be dominated by the sacred dragon Shi Tao alone. Of course, the Dragon King would definitely not let this happen, but there was no doubt that the other two sacred dragon warriors' residences would decline because of this. The fall of the sacred dragon residence would definitely require another sacred dragon warrior to replace it. If an inheritor of the sacred dragon's blood essence appeared in the dragon prison domain during this period of time, the warrior could temporarily live in Dragon Prison City and be nurtured with the resources of the sacred dragon residence. At the same time, the warrior's family would also be nurtured, making it a new sacred dragon residence. If there was no one in the dragon prison domain, the Dragon King would apply for the transfer of people from other places. In any case, it was necessary to ensure that there were 4 sacred dragon residences in the dragon prison domain. Such a sacred dragon residence was responsible for the stability of the region and was the most balanced. Chapter 4088. It could be foreseen that the Shi clan residence would enter a stage of rapid development. This made many elders of the Shi clan residence rejoice at Holy Dragon Shi Tao's foresight. If it wasn't for the fact that Holy Dragon Shi Tao thought highly of Kong Xinmu and maintained a good relationship with Kong Xinmu, the Shi clan residence might not have the Shi clan residence it was today. Kong Xinmu had made a great contribution by exposing the Xia clan residence's rebellion, which had benefited the Shi clan residence. As a result, Kong Xinmu had obtained 2 first-grade dragon martial skills, both of which were dragon origin martial skills. One of them was the chaotic dragon body, which he had already cultivated to the earth level, but the other was the void dragon sky-shattering strike. He had only just successfully cultivated it and hadn't even reached the mortal level. It seemed that he needed to find an opportunity to cultivate it. However, even for Kong Xinmu, other than body-refining dragon martial skills, he wouldn't be able to cultivate other dragon martial skills very quickly, so he wasn't in too much of a hurry. After a period of time, the relationship between Kong Xinmu and the Shi clan residents grew closer and closer. At the banquet that day, Holy Dragon Shi Tao hosted the banquet and invited Kong Xinmu and Jiang Liuxue. Of course, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong were also present. Shi Yutong was now at the 3rd level of the divine martial realm. Previously, she was about the same as Shi Yueying, but now compared to her sister, she was a bit behind. However, she wasn't jealous. Instead, she was happy for her sister. Many elders of the Shi clan residents kept toasting Kong Xinmu, hoping to leave a better impression on Kong Xinmu. Because this time, Kong Xinmu had made a great contribution. It could be imagined that Kong Xinmu's future was limitless. He would definitely be able to set foot on a higher position. If Kong Xinmu worked hard and tried to advance to the Holy Dragon level, the Yen Dragon Emperor might very well give him a blessing, allowing his inherited essence blood to advance to the Dragon King level. This was a young man who was likely to become a Dragon King in the future. How could the elders of the Shi clan not try to befriend him? Kong Xinmu, on the other hand, wasn't too enthusiastic because he clearly remembered that before the clan martial competition, these elders of the Shi clan estate didn't have a good impression of him, and they had even advised sacred dragon Shi Tao to give up on him time and time again. If not for Holy Dragon Shi Tao's insistence, even giving him the dragon-grade halberd of the Sky Saint, Kong Xinmu wouldn't have achieved what he had today. Of course, with the Black Dragon's consciousness and the innate ability to devour, he would be able to rise to this level sooner or later. However, that would take a very long time. Perhaps a year, perhaps 2 years. It was impossible to say for sure. With Sacred Dragon Shi Tao's support, Jiang Shenwu's rate of improvement was much faster. Little brother Jiang, you're really a young talent. Since you're so close to our young miss, why don't we get engaged here? The elders of the Shi clan estate could no longer hold it in. They looked at Kong Xinmu as if they were looking at a delicious cake, and wanted to rope him into their Shi clan estate. If that was the case, the Shi clan estate would be tied to Kong Xinmu in the future. Once Kong Xinmu was promoted, the Shi clan estate would be able to rise as well. Although Shi Yueying had also improved extremely quickly and had also made contributions, anyone could tell that if it wasn't for Kong Xinmu, Shi Yueying wouldn't have been able to improve so quickly and obtain so many contributions. Hearing the elder's words, the dozens of people at the banquet all became nervous. For some people, the banquet was just a pretense. The key was to try to tie Kong Xinmu firmly to their boat. This was what the elders of the Shi clan estate were thinking. Immediately, the other elders added on and said with a smile, "That's right. It's only right for a beauty to be paired with a hero. Our young miss is second to none in the entire dragon prison city. Now that she has awakened into a pentagonal dark ice dragon, and her cultivation is also keeping up, she's a perfect match for little brother Jiang. That's right, if little brother Jiang and young miss can't be together, it would be such a pity." Many of the elders voiced out their opinions. As the people involved, Kong Xinmu and Shi Yueying were a little surprised. Although Shi Yueying was quite cheerful and sensible when she was with Kong Xinmu, in front of others, she was definitely an absolute cold beauty. Hearing the elder's words, she frowned and said, "You don't have to worry about this, do you?" Although she wanted to be with Kong Xinmu, she knew very well that Kong Xinmu was now fully focused on saving her father. Even if Kong Xinmu wanted to be with her, she did not want it to be a utilitarian. These elders' actions made Shi Yueying feel that her feelings were mixed with impurities, and they were a lot of impurities, which made her very uncomfortable. Kong Xinmu's expression was the same as usual. He glanced at Shi Yueying and knew what she was thinking. Right now, Kong Xinmu really did not have such thoughts in this regard. It was too early for him to get married. Not to mention, how old was he now? These elders of the Shi clan estate were considering this question now, which showed how much they wanted to tie Kong Xinmu to this boat. However, Kong Xinmu clearly had his own considerations. After all, he was now related to the Heaven Awakening demon realm. Once this relationship was exposed, it would definitely not be a good thing for him. If he really had anything to do with the Shi clan estate now, it would be extremely disadvantageous to the Shi clan estate. As for the matter of Kong Xinmu's relationship with the Heaven Awakening demon realm, only Holy Dragon Shi Tao and Shi Yueying knew about it. However, the father and daughter duo did not know the specifics. They only knew that Kong Xinmu definitely had his own special ability to successfully escape from the Heaven Awakening demon realm. This special ability was something that no one else knew about. "Eldest miss, you're wrong to say that. Even if you're not worried, we're worried for you." "That's right. Although you're still young, you can get engaged first. You can slowly think about it in the future." The elders were a little unhappy with Shi Yueying's words and immediately retorted, hoping that they would immediately get involved. In the end, this matter needed Holy Dragon Shi Tao to make a final decision. He observed Kong Xinmu and Shi Yueying's expressions and naturally knew what they were thinking. He could only wave his hand and say, "Let's not talk about this matter for now. You don't have to say anything else. If fate allows it, you will naturally walk together in the future. There's no need to be in a hurry." Since Holy Dragon Shi Tao had spoken, the others naturally did not dare to say anything else. However, these elders were a little unhappy with Shi Tao. This was clearly an excellent opportunity to tie Kong Xinmu to the Shi clan estate. As the clan leader, Holy Dragon Shi Tao did not even grasp it properly. It was truly too disappointing. "Humph," some of the elders snorted coldly in secret. Unfortunately, Kong Xinmu was still present, so they could not show their dissatisfaction so obviously. On the surface, they could only look a little regretful. Chapter 4089. This banquet could be considered a celebration for Kong Xinmu, Shi Yueying, and Jiang Liuxue. At the very least, the three of them were happy. As for the other elders of the Shi clan's mansion, it had nothing to do with Kong Xinmu. That night, Kong Xinmu slept well. He even dreamed of his father, Jiang Zizai, the dragon sealing abyss, and the black dragon's consciousness in his body, causing him to be at a loss when he woke up. For a moment, he felt that he was too far away from saving his father. It was even possible that he would never be able to reach that goal in his entire life. The feeling in the dream was extremely strong, causing him to almost lose his fighting spirit. However, when he left the room and came out to be bathed in the sunlight, the dazzling light immediately brought him back to his senses. That's right, for ordinary people, wanting to save someone from the dragon's sealing abyss is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, for me, I have the black dragon's consciousness in my body, and I also have the power to devour. I can devour the divine dragon's blood essence and continuously increase the level of the inherited blood essence. As long as I don't die and continue, sooner or later, I will be able to reach the level of saving my father. Kang Xinmu thought to himself as he stood at the door of the room and clenched his fists. At this moment, Shi Yueying suddenly appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. When she saw Kang Xinmu, her face lit up. Kang Xinmu, you're awake? Come to the front hall, the Dragon King actually came to find you personally. You mean, the Dragon King? Hearing that, Kang Xinmu was a little confused, but he quickly reacted and nodded, yes, I'll freshen up and be right there. Shi Yueying then turned around and left. Kang Xinmu was left alone. He washed up as fast as he could and rushed to the front hall of the Shi clan's mansion. He discovered that the holy dragon Shi Tao and many of the Shi clan's elders were all there, and in the middle of the hall, a middle-aged man with a serious expression was sitting there. The middle-aged man wore a gray robe. There were some chain patterns engraved on the robe. It gave off a somewhat awe-inspiring and terrifying feeling. The Dragon Prison Domain was named after the Nirvana power of the Dragon King. After the Dragon King stepped into the Nirvana Tribulation realm, he awakened the Dragon Enslavement's Nirvana power. When he fought, his entire body was surrounded by extremely terrifying chains, and he could completely imprison his opponent in the iron chains until they died. Therefore, he was called the Dragon King. The Nirvana force awakened by the Dragon Warrior had a certain connection with the innate ability. Therefore, it could be imagined that the Dragon King's innate ability was also better at imprisoning opponents. However, none of this had anything to do with Kang Xinmu. No matter what ability Qiu Dragon King had, it was not something he could deal with at the moment. Kang Xinmu was only concerned about why Dragon King was looking for him. Junior Kang Xinmu greets Lord Dragon King. When Kang Xinmu saw Qiu Dragon King, he immediately bowed. He was neither haughty nor humble, and he was not flattered because of the other party's identity. After all, he had even met Tu Yenny. Tu Yenny was a super expert in the Fire Dragon army. His strength definitely surpassed that of Dragon King. There was no doubt about this. Even Tu Yenny was rather respectful to Kang Xinmu. This made Kang Xinmu very clear about his current status in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court. As expected, when Dragon King saw Kang Xinmu, a smile appeared on his originally serious face. Not bad, not bad. I heard that brother Kang Xinmu is young and heroic, and has an extraordinary bearing. Seeing you today, it is indeed true. Today, I have come mainly to pass a message to Lord Yen Dragon Emperor. Lord Yen Dragon Emperor? Kang Xinmu's expression changed slightly. He was thinking of finding an opportunity to go to Yen Dragon Emperor's city to see if there was a chance to infiltrate the Divine Dragon Graveyard in Yen Dragon Emperor's city. In the end, there was news from Yen Dragon Emperor. However, Kang Xinmu was not too excited. After all, he did not know what message Dragon Emperor Yen had asked Dragon King to pass. Although it could not be anything bad, it was difficult to have anything to do with the Divine Dragon Graveyard. When the others heard Dragon King's words, they immediately revealed a look of understanding. They knew that Kang Xinmu had struck gold this time. It should be known that Dragon Emperor Yan was the well-deserved ruler of the entire Yan Dragon Emperor dynasty. Even Dragon Emperor Yan had asked Dragon King to personally pass a message to Kong Shinmu. It could be seen that he valued Kong Shinmu very much. To an ordinary dragon martial artist, how great of an honor was that? Even the sacred dragon Shi Tao had not received such an honor. Therefore, the sacred dragon Shi Tao had already stood up from his seat with a look of pleasant surprise on his face. He had originally thought that Jiang Shunwu would be rewarded with a grade 1 dragon martial skill for his contributions, which was quite a good reward. But now, it seemed that this was nothing. It was even possible that the real reward had only just arrived. After all, Kong Shinmu's contribution in this war against the Northern Chill Dragon country was too great. If it were not for Kong Shinmu, it would have taken longer to figure out the Northern Chill Dragon country's real goal. Not to mention the betrayal of the sacred dragon Xia Yan. It should be known that the most taboo thing for a leader was the betrayal of his subordinates. Now that Kong Shinmu had helped Dragon Emperor Yan expose the sacred dragon Xia Yan's plot to turn the tables, this information was enough to make Dragon Emperor Yan look at Kong Shinmu in a new light. And what Kong Shinmu did on the battlefield after that was impossible for ordinary dragon martial artists to do. He sneaked into the Northern Chill Dragon country's camp to spy on the enemy situation, and even helped them to let the 12 flame dragon envoys sneak in quietly. These were all things that ordinary people could not do. Only Kong Shinmu could think of and put into practice. Kong Shinmu's existence could be said to have made the war against the Northern Chill Dragon country much smoother. His contribution accounted for at least half of the whole war. Dragon Emperor Yan's attention made everyone in the Shi mansion completely envious of Kong Shinmu. Many of the elders were now even more annoyed. Originally, they were not sure how much Kong Shinmu's contribution was, but now it seemed that it had exceeded their original imagination. If they had known earlier, they would have forced Kong Shinmu and Shi Yueying to get engaged at the banquet yesterday. But now, it seemed a little inappropriate to mention such a thing again. After all, in their opinion, Kong Shinmu was about to soar to success. How could he still take a fancy to the young miss of their Shi mansion? They were so regretful that they wanted to hang their heads and stamp their feet. However, they did not think that if they had really forced Kong Shinmu and Shi Yueying to get engaged yesterday, it was likely that the relationship between Kong Shinmu and the Shi mansion would have become even more stiff, or even worse than it was now. Moreover, these elders did not have much real power in the Shi mansion. Under the pressure of the sacred dragon Shi Tao, how could they really force Kong Shinmu and Shi Yueying to get engaged? I wonder what message Lord Dragon Emperor Yan wants to convey to this junior. Chapter 4090. Xiao Dragon King looked at Kong Shinmu's expression and was quite satisfied with this junior. With such a mentality, even if he became a true expert in the future, his mentality would not change too much and he would be able to keep calm at all times. He was naturally happy that such a genius had appeared in the dragon prison domain that he led. Get ready. Tomorrow, you will follow me to the Yen Dragon Emperor city. Xiao Dragon King smiled faintly. The battle with the Northern Chill Dragon country will be based on merit. Little brother Kong Shinmu is one of them. If I'm not wrong, you should be able to get a chance to enter the Holy Tower of the Flaming Dragon. Holy Tower of the Flaming Dragon? These words caused everyone present to be shocked. Holy Tower of the Flaming Dragon? What's that? Kong Shinmu had never heard of it. After all, he came from the Jiang clan. Unlike the Shi clan elders who grew up in Dragon Prison City, he naturally knew some things that Kong Shinmu did not. The Holy Tower of the Flaming Dragon is a sacred place in the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire. Rumor has it that it contains the power of the Super Divine Dragon. As long as you can pass some tests, the grade of the Divine Dragon inheritance blood will increase. Xiao Dragon King explained patiently. With your Heavenly Dragon inheritance blood, you should only need to pass 5 tests to be able to increase it to the Holy Dragon Inheritance Blood. I see. Kang Xinmu was a little surprised and nodded. He had originally wanted to go to the center of the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire and try to sneak into the Divine Dragon Tomb to devour the Divine Dragon Bones and increase his Divine Dragon Inheritance Blood. Now it seemed that he did not need to sneak into the Divine Dragon Tomb for the time being. We were able to step into the Dragon King realm from the Holy Dragon because we had stepped into the Holy Tower of the Flaming Dragon. However, even back then, I could only pass 3 tests in the Holy Tower of the Flaming Dragon, barely meeting the requirements to increase the grade of the Divine Dragon Inheritance Blood. The enslaved Dragon King glanced at Jiang Shenwu, then shook his head. To be honest, no one has ever been able to pass the 5 trials in the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon. Of course, you can raise it a little first this time. If you have the next chance to enter the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon next time, the combined effects of the 2 times will naturally be able to raise the grade of your Divine Dragon Heritage Blood Essence. Can this be stacked? Kang Xinmu was stunned. Of course, but the recovery time of the Divine Dragon Blood Essence in the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower is relatively slow. Furthermore, the Flame Dragon Emperor Empire is vast and rich in resources. There are countless dragon martial artists who want to step into it. It is extremely difficult to get a second chance to enter. Dragon King nodded. I understand. Kang Xinmu nodded. He did not ask what the test in the Sacred Tower was like. If he could say it, he would definitely say it. If he hadn't, he definitely wouldn't have told him in advance. This is a rare opportunity. You must grasp it well. I'll be leaving first. Remember to be ready to leave tomorrow. The enslaved Dragon King stood up. After conveying these words, he prepared to leave. As the Dragon King of the Dragon Prison Domain, he ruled this area and would not leave the Dragon Prison Domain easily. Now that he was bringing Kang Xinmu to the Flame Dragon Emperor City, he still had to prepare some things. Going to the Flame Dragon Emperor City was also an opportunity for Dragon King to visit some friends. After Dragon King left, the entire front hall of the Shi clan mansion was in an uproar. The Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon was an honor that the entire Shi clan mansion had never had before. No one expected that Kang Xinmu would have such an opportunity. Even if he could not successfully raise the grade of the Divine Dragon Heritage Blood Essence in the Sacred Tower, it would still increase the power of the Divine Dragon Heritage Blood Essence, far surpassing the ordinary Heavenly Dragon Heritage Blood Essence. Congratulations, Brother Jiang, you will definitely achieve great success in the future with such an opportunity. Don't forget about the Shi clan mansion then. Many elders of the Shi clan mansion surrounded Kang Xinmu, trying to get close to him. Unfortunately, Kang Xinmu did not want to pay attention to them. He just left the front hall with Shi Yueying and Shi Yueying. After all, he would be leaving tomorrow. He still had something to say to the sisters. This caused the elders of the Shi estate to become unhappy. He was just a young man in the divine martial arts realm. Just because he got the chance to enter the Holy Tower of the Fire Dragon, he was so arrogant and looked down on them. How could they be happy? However, they had to admit that in a few years, Kang Xinmu's strength would far surpass them. There was nothing they could do about it. After I'm gone, Jiang Shenwu still wanted to say something to Shi Yueying and her sister, but Shi Yueying stopped him. She pursed her lips and smiled. Go ahead. We'll be fine. I have to help my sister improve her cultivation and give her some pointers. You can come back when you're free. Okay. Kang Xinmu swallowed what he was going to say. Shi Yutong was originally lively, but now she pouted and said, Dad is so biased. He only let sister follow you, but now she is already in the 7th level of the God Martial Arts realm, and I am only in the 3rd level of the God Martial Arts realm. If I had known this, I would have come with sister. The girl's angry look made Kang Xinmu and Shi Yueying look at each other and smile. Both of them knew that Shi Yutong was not really angry. She was just unhappy that Shi Tao had stopped her from going with Kang Xinmu and Shi Yueying. From Shi Tao's point of view, this was not wrong. After all, Kang Xinmu was surrounded by many dangers. If both of his daughters followed Kang Xinmu and something happened, what should he do? For Holy Dragon Shi Tao, his two daughters were treasures. I was the one who blamed him for pushing me into the fire pit. Shi Yueying also said jokingly. But no matter what, the current situation was not bad. Kang Xinmu had brought Shi Yueying back with a meritorious deed, giving Shi Yueying the capital to improve. She had also awakened the five elements' mysterious ice power. She had upgraded from the true dragon's blood essence to the sky dragon's blood essence. Such opportunities were rare. It was not easy to raise the level of the blood essence. As for Jiang Liuxue, she should be on her way back to the Jiang clan. She definitely had to go back and let the Jiang clan know of Kang Xinmu's current situation. She also had to protect her parents. With her current strength, she was fully qualified to be the pillar of the Jiang clan. Although she had not reached the Nirvana Tribulation realm, her current strength was not much different from that of a dragon warrior who had just stepped into the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Everything was developing in a good direction. As for Kang Xinmu himself, he was looking forward to the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Although Dragon King had said that no one had ever passed the 5 trials in the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower, he really wanted to see if he could. Old Black Dragon, you won't let me down, right? The corner of Kang Xinmu's mouth curled up. The Black Dragon consciousness in his body had helped him so much. In the end, it would definitely ask for something. But before that, it would definitely think of a way to increase Kang Xinmu's strength. Otherwise, Kang Xinmu would not be able to help the Black Dragon at all. Chapter 4091. The Yen Dragon Emperor Empire. This was a country that was not considered too strong in the Dragon Martial Continent, but it was the country where Kang Xinmu was born. In the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire's Yen Dragon Emperor City, there was a Yen Dragon Sacred Tower. In the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower, there was the power passed down by the Super Divine Dragon. As long as one had the chance to challenge the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower, it was possible to obtain the power passed down by the Super Divine Dragon and increase the grade of the Divine Dragon's blood essence. 3 days later, the envoy from the Yen Dragon Emperor City took Kang Xinmu away from the Dragon Prison City and stepped into the territory of the Yen Dragon Emperor City. Looking down from the sky, one could see a magnificent and prosperous imperial city. The imperial city was built with Yen Dragon crystals, and the whole city shone with a dazzling light. Powerful dragon martial artists were constantly flying around, which made Kang Xinmu, who had just arrived here, fascinated. The dragon martial artists who inherited the Sky Dragon's blood essence were an extremely ordinary existence in the Yen Dragon Emperor City. This was the holy land of the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire's dragon martial artists. The Demon Hunters Association's headquarters in the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire was here. The Yen Dragon Emperor also lived nearby, and the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower protected it with a mysterious power in the center. If there was any place in the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire that was the safest, it would undoubtedly be the Yen Dragon Emperor City. The existence of the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower made it impossible for foreign dragon martial artists to invade the Yen Dragon Emperor City. Even if the Dragon Emperor of the Wintry North came, he would not be able to break through the mysterious defense of the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower. Of course, the opposite was also true. In the Northern Chill Dragon Country's Imperial City, there was also a Northern Chill Holy Tower that protected the Northern Chill Dragon Country's Imperial City, preventing foreign dragon martial artists from invading. As long as the Dragon Emperor existed, the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower would exist. It was said that the Yen Dragon Emperor had existed for countless years. As a Dragon Emperor, his lifespan was so long that no one knew how long he had lived. The Yen Dragon Emperor had seen the rise and fall of the Jiang clan many times. However, the rise of Jiang Zizai still caught the attention of the Dragon Emperor. One could imagine the level of Jiang Zizai's talent. Now, Kang Xinmu had also caught the attention of the Dragon Emperor and had come to the Dragon Emperor city. Above the heavenly dragon divine dragon's blood essence is the holy dragon. After that, it's the Dragon King that can only be promoted in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower. After the holy dragon is the Dragon Emperor. Kang Xinmu came to the sky above the Dragon Emperor city, his eyes shining. Although there are no rumors about this, the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower was passed down by the ancient Super Dragon martial artist. How did the Yen Dragon Emperor become a dragon martial artist at the Dragon Emperor level? The possibility of him advancing by himself is too small. If he also advanced to the Dragon Emperor level from another sacred tower, then that means, if I can reach the Dragon Emperor level of inheritance blood, a super dragon martial artist will appear and create a sacred tower for me. He will also bestow me a Dragon Emperor kingdom, just like the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. Kang Xinmu was different from the other dragon martial artists. He had the consciousness of the black dragon in his body. He also knew the heaven awakening devil dragon, so he could know some things that ordinary people did not know. In the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, the Dragon Emperor was like a god, dominating the fate of everyone. Some dragon martial artists were even willing to sacrifice their lives for the Yen Dragon Emperor. They were willing to do anything. This was the environment of the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. For Kang Xinmu, the Yen Dragon Emperor was not a god, but a goal to surpass. After all, he wanted to save his father, Jiang Zizai. If he wanted to step into the sealed dragon abyss, he must find the help of the ancestral dragon. At the very least, he must leave the dragon martial continent. Therefore, the level of the Dragon Emperor was just a goal for Kang Xinmu. It's just that it's too difficult to reach the Dragon Emperor level. Now that I have the heavenly dragon divine dragon blood, if I want to devour the divine dragon essence and bones to advance, I must devour the bones of the Dragon King level experts. Kang Xinmu secretly shook his head. Although he had the power of devouring, it was still too difficult to improve his cultivation level. This was because he had to devour the bones of the divine dragon 2 levels above him in order to improve the grade of the divine dragon blood as quickly as possible. Otherwise, it would be useless. When he was at the true dragon level, he devoured the bones of the holy dragon divine dragon in the ancient battlefield of the Dragon Bone Valley and advanced to the heavenly dragon realm. Now, as a heavenly dragon, he had to devour the bones of the Dragon King level. If he advanced the grade of the divine dragon blood in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, he would reach the level of the holy dragon. If he wanted to advance to the level of the Dragon King, he would need to devour the bones of the Dragon Emperor level, which was almost impossible. One must know that there were not many Dragon Kings in the martial dragon continent. Originally, if Kang Xinmu wanted to advance to the level of the Holy Dragon, he had to go to the Flame Dragon's sacred tower and devour the bones of the Dragon King level divine dragons. Although he could advance by devouring the bones of the Holy Dragon, the increase was very small. It was not as efficient as devouring the bones of the Dragon King. Now that there is a chance in the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, there is no need to go to the divine dragon graveyard. Kang Xinmu heaved a sigh of relief. After all, he was not sure how many bones of the Dragon King level divine dragons were in the divine dragon graveyard. The dragon martial artists in the martial dragon continent all obtained the divine dragon blood essence and obtained the ability to transform into dragons. They were not like natural dragon martial artists, so external forces could improve their blood essence. Above the Dragon Emperor level is the Super Divine Dragon level. However, Super Divine Dragons rarely come to this martial dragon continent. Kang Xinmu opened his eyes and decided not to care so much. He would go to the Flame Dragon's sacred tower to take a look first. If he could successfully improve the divine dragon blood essence and reach the level of the holy dragon blood essence, that would naturally be the best. The envoy brought Kong Shinmu into the Flame Dragon Emperor city and then arranged a residence for him. Tomorrow, you will go to the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower on your own and hand this token to the general guarding the Sacred Tower. He will let you in to participate in the training. The Dragon Emperor needs to guard the Sealing Dragon Abyss in the near future, so he will not be able to come back to see you personally. Alright, thank you, Senior. Kong Shinmu took the token from the envoy and left. Kong Shinmu thought for a while and then rested in the courtyard that had been arranged. The next morning, Kong Shinmu headed in the direction of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Not long after, he arrived near the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Although it was located in the Imperial City, there were not many people around the Sacred Tower. A passerby saw Kong Shinmu heading in the direction of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower and reminded him, "Young man, that's the direction of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Don't go there casually, or I'm afraid you will get into big trouble." "Thank you, but my goal is the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower," Kong Shinmu said casually and then continued to walk in the direction of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. The passerby looked at Kong Shinmu's back and was a little stunned, but soon snorted softly. A kind reminder, and he still doesn't know what's good for him. Young people nowadays really don't know their limits. How can a kid like him approach the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower? Chapter 4092. There were too many powerful dragon warriors in the Yen Dragon Emperor city. Here, even the inheritors of the Nirvana Tribulation Realm Heavenly Dragon Blood Essence were not ranked at all. Holy Dragon level dragon warriors were everywhere, and only the Dragon King level dragon warriors with inherited blood essence would have a higher status than the other dragon warriors. In such a Yen Dragon Emperor city, the chances of entering the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower were extremely slim. Even those sacred dragon-level dragon martial artists only had the right to enter at specific times. Only when they had rendered meritorious service would the Yen Dragon Emperor allow them to enter. At other times, it was impossible for them to enter the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower. Although the number of times they entered the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower was not fixed, it was more or less within the range. Someone had once calculated that the number of dragon warriors who could enter the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower every year was definitely less than 12. In other words, on average, there was less than one person a month. Generally speaking, they were all sacred dragon-level divine dragon blood essence inheritors. After making contributions, they were rewarded by the Dragon Emperor and thus entered the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. If they could pass the 3 tests, they could become Dragon King level dragon blood essence inheritors and become a Dragon King. There were no more than 100 Dragon King level dragon warriors in the entire Dragon Emperor dynasty. Even Dragon King level dragon warriors had differences in strength. For example, the 12 Yen Dragon Envoys, although they were also Dragon King level dragon blood essence inheritors, their strength surpassed ordinary Dragon Kings. There were some sacred dragons who could barely reach the Dragon King level and pass the 3 tests in the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. However, the Dragon King inheritance blood essence inheritors were not very powerful, so their combat strength was not high. This was decided based on their performance in the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. The Yen Dragon Emperor was in charge of the Divine Dragon blood essence inheritors. He held the Flame Dragon ritual in various places and let countless ordinary martial cultivators try to get the Divine Dragon blood essence inheritors from the Coiling Dragon Pillar. He would only put the blood essence below the Sky Dragon level. Only extremely talented martial cultivators could obtain the Heavenly Dragon Divine Dragon's blood essence. For others, being able to obtain a true dragon or mortal dragon was already not bad. To truly become a holy dragon, one could only go through some special conditions, such as dragon energy crystals or the Holy Tower of the Fire Dragon. When Dragon Emperor Yen activated the Flame Dragon sacrifice, the essence blood of the Divine Dragon that was placed in the Coiling Dragon Pillar came from this Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. One could imagine that the many sacred pagodas, including the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda, were the source of the divine dragon inheritance blood essence for the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty and even for all the dragon warriors in the martial dragon continent. The divine dragon inheritance blood essence was a blessing given to them by the legendary super divine dragon. Therefore, the importance of the flame dragon sacred pagoda in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court was self-evident. On average, less than one person could enter the sacred tower every month. After all, the divine dragon's inheritance blood essence was not unlimited. After a person entered and obtained it, it would be consumed, and it would take time to recover. Therefore, Dragon Emperor Yen controlled the number of people who could enter the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda to ensure that the amount of inheritance blood essence in the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda was not insufficient. Now, someone saw a young man in black stepping into the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda. Young man, this was a young man. According to common sense, those who were qualified to step into the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda were all giants in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, such as the holy dragon Shitao. Among so many dragon warriors in the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, this was the first time they heard of a young man who could step into the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda. In an instant, the news about this young man, Kong Shinmu, spread throughout the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda. This young man, Kong Shinmu, was the one who defeated the Northern Chill Dragon Country on the battlefield and obtained important information about the Northern Chill Dragon Country. Not only that, he also exposed the rebellion of a holy dragon in the dragon prison domain, and made a great contribution in this war. No wonder he could get the chance to step into the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda. But isn't it too easy for such a person to step into the Sacred Pagoda? What a waste. It doesn't matter. Anyway, this kid relied on his special ability to expose the traitor and obtain information. His direct combat strength won't be too strong, and he won't be able to pass too many tests in the Sacred Pagoda. That's right. In this Flame Dragon Pagoda, the more tests one passes, the more inherited blood essence one obtains, and the more one can change the level of one's inherited blood essence. This young man named Kong Shinmu probably won't get too much essence, so it doesn't matter if he goes in. Take a guess. How many tests can this kid pass in the Sacred Pagoda? The difficulty of the second test is not small. It is said that the third test is against an opponent 3 realms above him. It will be extremely difficult to pass. This kid definitely won't pass. I don't think so. Since the Yen Dragon Emperor let him in, there should be a possibility of him passing the third test. But it's useless even if he passes all 3 tests. The difference between a sky dragon and a holy dragon is huge. The divine dragon's inherited blood essence required is much more than that of a holy dragon to Dragon King. That's right. Unless he can pass all 5 tests, this kid will never be able to successfully advance from the sky dragon level to the holy dragon level. Almost everyone in the Yen Dragon Emperor city was in a heated discussion. The Yen Dragon Emperor was not in the imperial city for the time being, but even if the Dragon Emperor was here, it did not affect the other dragon martialists' discussions about Kong Shinmu. As for Kong Shinmu himself, he did not care about these people's discussions at all. Because he could not hear a single one of them. He was already in the Flame Dragon Pagoda. He passed through the guards at the entrance and reached the first level of the Sacred Pagoda. On the first level of this ancient wooden Sacred Pagoda, only Kong Shinmu was there. But soon, a mysterious force gradually formed a figure in front of him. At this time, he was facing a dragon martialist that was 1 realm higher than him. This dragon martialist should be an illusion, right? This mysterious force should be from the super divine dragon. Kong Shinmu thought to himself as he carefully sized up the illusory dragon martialist in front of him. His goal was to break through the 5 tests and successfully advance from a sky dragon martialist to a holy dragon martialist. The power left by the super divine dragon in the Flame Dragon Pagoda had transformed into a dragon martialist that was 1 realm higher than Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu's mission should be to defeat his opponent. In that case, let's do it. Kang Shinmu's eyes were filled with eagerness. He was now at the 9th level of the God Martial Realm, while his opponent was at the 1st level of the Nirvana Tribulation Realm. His strength was one realm higher than Kang Shinmu's. However, Kang Shinmu could feel that this opponent did not seem to have comprehended the true Nirvana force. This also led to this guy's strength being equivalent to a slightly stronger 9th level of the God Martial Realm. In other words, it was equivalent to a 10th level of the God Martial Realm that did not exist. This should be the strength set by the Super Divine Dragon for the sake of fairness. Chapter 4093. The first opponent on the first floor of the Holy Tower was a Mirage Dragon martial artist, who was one level higher than the challenger. However, if someone like Jiang Shenwu, who was at the 9th level of the Divine Martial Realm, were to enter the Holy Tower, then the other party would be a fake Nirvana Tribulation Dragon martial artist, a Nirvana Tribulation Realm martial artist who had not cultivated Nirvana power. In other words, Kang Shinmu's first opponent was actually easier than a real Nirvana Tribulation Realm Dragon martial artist. Of course, it was not much easier. After all, his opponent was one level higher than him. Even without Nirvana force, his talent was still very strong. Therefore, ordinary dragon martial artists might not even be able to pass the first test. However, it was not a problem for Kang Shinmu. Extreme Shadow Meteor! Kang Shinmu shouted. He turned into a pitch-black dragon and flew toward his opponent. At the same time, countless pitch-black dragon teeth condensed in the air. Shadow Dragon Teeth Transformation. This was the Grade 3 attack dragon martial technique that Jiang Shenwu had cultivated for a long time. For the current him, its practicality was not very high, but its advantage was that it consumed relatively little energy. When used to deal with opponents that were not too strong, it was still relatively effective. Countless shadow dragon teeth condensed and attacked his opponent in an instant. The Mirage Dragon martial artist was a fire divine dragon. At this moment, his whole body was enveloped in a layer of blazing flames. The flame star revolved around him, making him look extremely fiery. When Kang Shinmu's shadow dragon teeth transformation swept over, the Mirage Dragon martial artist's fire talent surged and engulfed Kang Shinmu's shadow dragon teeth. Then, he descended from the sky. Flaming meteors fell from the sky and attacked Kang Shinmu. This is the Origin Dragon martial technique. As soon as Kang Shinmu felt the power of his opponent's attack, he immediately realized what was going on. No wonder his opponent did not have Nirvana force. It turned out that all the dragon martial techniques he used were Origin Dragon martial techniques. After all, this was a holy tower passed down by the Super Shinran. The tests within would naturally not be that simple. The other party's talent was even stronger than Kang Shinmu's. Furthermore, each of his moves was an Origin Dragon martial technique. Even Kang Shinmu had to be careful when dealing with him. No wonder there aren't many people in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's Imperial Court who can pass too many tests in the Dragon Emperor's Imperial Court. Kang Shinmu was enlightened. The other dragon warriors who stepped into the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower for the first time would always be caught off guard by the opponent's first move and get injured. However, Kang Shinmu would not be like that. This was because he had already cultivated the body-refining dragon-type martial technique, the chaotic dragon body, to the earth stage. The defense of his dragon body had already surpassed too many ordinary dragon martial artists. As the opponent's flames descended, Kang Shinmu let out a roar and charged out of the flames. Even though he had suffered some light injuries, he was fearless. It didn't affect Kang Shinmu's combat strength in the slightest. Void Dragon Sky Raising Strike. Kang Shinmu finally released the Origin Dragon martial technique that he had just cultivated. The Void Dragon Sky Raising Strike was an extremely terrifying attack. As Kang Shinmu's devouring power gathered in the field, the shadow of a pitch-black divine dragon appeared in the air. Then, it continuously spat out pitch-black light cannons filled with devouring power from its mouth. The pitch-black light cannons swept towards the opponent. Boom! 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 8 consecutive Void Dragon sky-raising strikes landed accurately on the opponent's illusory fire divine dragon. The attack speed of the Void Dragon's sky-raising strike was too fast. From the moment the Void Dragon formed in mid-air to the moment the 8 cannons were fired, it only took a total of 3 breaths of time. The opponent was completely repelled and fell to the bottom of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower with a loud bang. The Flame Dragon Sacred Tower was built from an extremely ancient type of wood. However, this wood was extremely hard. Let alone Kong Shinmu, even the Flame Dragon Emperor would not be able to break through it. Therefore, Kong Shinmu could completely rest assured and attack. As the opponent was struck down, Kong Shinmu's entire pitch-black divine dragon body suddenly swept forward and wrapped around the opponent with his dragon tail. He did not care about the flames that were still burning on the opponent's body. Even though his own pitch-black divine dragon body was constantly being injured, he still tightly restrained the opponent. His devouring power began to corrode the opponent's body. However, Kong Shinmu soon discovered that he did not seem to need to blast open a wound on the opponent's body to deal with the illusory Fire Dragon Sacred Tower's dragon martial artist. This fire attribute dragon martial artist did not have a single wound on its body. It was just that a lot of its energy had been blasted away and its strength seemed to have weakened. Of course, it did not become too weak. However, if this level of attack was enough to make the opponent lose its combat power, then the challenge of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower would be too easy. Even so, Kong Shinmu had discovered an excellent shortcut. This was because he only needed to constantly devour the opponent with his devouring power and he would be able to easily defeat the opponent. The opponent's power will be lost once it's consumed, but I can replenish and restore myself by devouring this part of the power. With this, defeating this illusory dragon martial artist will be a piece of cake. Kong Shinmu's eyes shone brightly. The devouring power was like a vast ocean that instantly exploded towards the opponent and completely enveloped it. Under the pitch-black devouring power, the power of flames constantly tried to rush out, but it was completely covered by the pitch-black devouring power. There was no possibility for the opponent to break free. Moreover, even if it broke free, Kong Shinmu could still continue to maintain the devouring power and devour the opponent's power. Although the opponent is using the origin source dragon martial technique, it's not very powerful under the cover of the devouring power. Kong Shinmu sensed that the opponent had also used several moves of the origin source dragon martial technique to deal with Kong Shinmu. Unfortunately, there was a layer of devouring power between the opponent and Kong Shinmu. He had also cultivated the chaotic dragon body, so these attacks were useless against Kong Shinmu. In merely the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Jiang Shenwu had already completely devoured the other party's energy and completely replenished his own body. The entire Flame Dragon Sacred Tower became quiet at this moment. Immediately after, Kong Shinmu found an ancient wooden passage above his head. It should be the passage to the second floor. Jiang Shenwu didn't need to rest at all. He flew straight up. As expected, another second-stage Nirvana Tribulation Realm martial artist appeared in front of him. It was an illusion dragon martial artist that also didn't have the power of Nirvana. The only difference was that this dragon martial artist's talent was earth. It used to be fire, and now it's earth. The opponent of each floor is different? Kong Shinmu thought to himself, but he did not care too much. Chapter 4094. The innate talent of the Earth attribute was constantly surging out from the body of the second-tier Nirvana Tribulation Realm illusionary dragon martial artist. Kong Shinmu did not hesitate at all. In an instant, the devouring power surged towards the opponent like a wave. The opponent's strength was at the second tier of the Nirvana Tribulation Realm, but he did not have the power of Nirvana. For Kong Shinmu, he was still considered easy to deal with. However, the slightly troublesome thing was that the opponent kept using the Origin Dragon Martial technique. This method made Kang Xinmu lose his advantage in terms of dragon martial techniques. Even the Origin Dragon Martial technique that the opponent used had already been comprehended and cultivated to the dragon grade. Although it had not reached the heaven grade, the might of the dragon grade Origin Dragon Martial technique was too terrifying. Even though Kang Xinmu had cultivated the chaotic dragon body and even used the heavenly sacred halberd to defend himself, he was still seriously injured by the opponent. If not for the devouring power that could devour the opponent's internal energy to heal his injuries and restore his internal energy, he would have been blasted out in just a few moves. Of course, Kang Xinmu had not used any powerful means yet. He had not used many of the dragon martial techniques, and he also had some trump cards that he had not used. But even so, it could be seen that the opponent was powerful. The difficulty of the Flame Dragon Sacred Pagoda's test was completely beyond the imagination of ordinary dragon martial artists. No wonder only the 1 in a billion dragon martial artist geniuses in the entire Flame Dragon Emperor Imperial Court are qualified to step into this place. Moreover, it is said that there are many people who cannot pass the third test at all. Kang Xinmu had a rough idea of where his limit was, so he already had some ideas about his goal this time. The originally set 5th challenge was almost Kang Xinmu's limit. Before that, he would not use all his means. Defend, Heavenly Sacred Halberd. In the second floor of the Sacred Flame Dragon Pagoda, Kang Xinmu had even used the Heavenly Saint's halberd to defend against the opponent's strength. With that golden light, the opponent was unable to directly obliterate Kang Xinmu. Although Kang Xinmu couldn't defeat his opponent with a single strike no matter what method he used, it was also impossible for his opponent to kill him. Therefore, Kang Xinmu was relieved. For the second round of the test, he only needed to use this method, and that was enough. As his opponent continued to unleash terrifying Origin Dragon martial skills with Earth Attribute innate ability, Kang Xinmu sustained serious injuries one after another. Then, he was quickly healed by the devouring power. He was injured again, and then healed again, up and down, his opponent just couldn't defeat Kang Xinmu completely. Not long after, the opponent's strength weakened under Kang Xinmu's devouring power, and it became even more impossible for him to defeat Kang Xinmu. Under the continuous devouring power, the opponent's innate earth power was quickly devoured. Passed. Next, set foot on the third floor. Kang Xinmu flew to the third floor with irresistible force. On the third floor, he saw an ice-type dragon martial artist at the third level of the Nirvana Tribulation Realm in front of him. This divine dragon possessed an endless power of ice, and its strength was at least double that of the illusion dragon martial artist on the first floor. Kill. Jiang Shunwu did not hesitate in the slightest and directly charged forward. Facing the opponent's first Origin Dragon martial skill attack, Kang Xinmu used the Martial Dragon Shield and the Heavenly Sacred Halberd. Under the golden light, he successfully resisted the killing intent contained in the opponent's Origin Dragon martial skill. With this move, the whole sacred tower seemed to have turned into a world of ice and snow. Countless icicles fell from the sky and landed on Kang Xinmu, and even his martial dragon shield was easily broken. If not for the chaotic dragon body and the heavenly sacred halberd's defense, Kang Xinmu would have died in the opponent's hands. This made Kang Xinmu very clear that the third test of the sacred tower was indeed very difficult. If it were any other martial cultivator, not many would be able to pass this test. Even Kang Xinmu had to rely on the dragon-grade dragon weapon, the Origin Dragon martial skill, the second-grade defensive dragon martial skill, and the martial dragon shield to resist the opponent's attack. Not to mention that he was already seriously injured. If it were anyone else, they would be out of here after enduring this move and the test would be over. But not Kang Xinmu. Devour, break. Boundless devouring power suddenly exploded amidst the waves of sharp icicles. The pitch-black power spread throughout the entire third floor of the sacred tower in an instant. Then, it surrounded the ice-type illusion dragon and invaded its body. Devour! Jiang Shenwu bellowed, and his entire divine dragon body approached the other party. He felt wisps of ice elemental talent being devoured into his body, turning into the purest power of the heavens and earth, merging into his own dragon body. His black dragon body, which had been pierced by the icicles, recovered at an extremely fast speed. The wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. But before he could completely recover, the pitch-black devouring power on the third floor of the sacred tower was suddenly broken by a wave of cold ice crystals. It was like a tsunami mixed with bone-chilling ice, and it swallowed Kang Xinmu in an instant. Fortunately, I just devoured some ice power, and my resistance to ice power has increased a little. Otherwise, would have died. Kang Xinmu's divine dragon body was sent flying, and he slammed heavily into the ancient wooden wall of the third floor of the sacred tower. His body was full of icicles, and blood kept flowing out of his body. Fortunately, he did not die. And he had calculated it well. This way, he would not die, and he had a chance to fight back. Devour! As the pitch-black devouring power surged out from Kang Xinmu's body, it directly devoured all the icicles on his body, turning them into pure power of heaven and earth, merging them into his body, and healing his wounds quickly. At the same time, because the opponent was using the origin source dragon martial technique, it contained extremely terrifying power. After Jiang Shenwu swallowed the power of this level, his resistance to the power of the ice attribute suddenly increased by a large amount, and it improved even faster than when he fought against the dragon warriors of the northern Chill Dragon country. The next origin source dragon martial technique with the same power would not be able to injure Kang Xinmu to this extent. As the devouring power surged out, Kang Xinmu's injuries recovered rapidly, and his resistance to ice power increased at an extremely fast speed. And the opponent's third attack finally arrived. Countless icicles appeared from all directions, extending towards Kang Xinmu. The temperature on the third floor of the sacred tower of the fire dragon martial technique dropped to freezing point, and the boiling dragon blood in Kang Xinmu's body froze. Boom! 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 Chapter 4095. The third move of the sacred tower of the flaming dragon's third level, the origin dragon martial technique. It crashed down with a loud bang. The ice pillar suppressed Kang Xinmu's entire dragon body. However, Kang Xinmu did not suffer much damage because he had already raised his resistance to the power of ice the previous 2 times. This time, he relied on the chaotic dragon body to resist the attack. He did not even use the martial dragon shield. Break! The Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break was an origin dragon martial technique. Kang Xinmu would never be stingy in using it. After all, he had to use this dragon martial technique frequently in order to improve his cultivation and obtain greater power. The illusory dragon appeared, and countless pitch-black devouring light cannons swept down, completely destroying the frost dragon pillars in the field and bombarding the illusory dragon warrior. The Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break blasted the illusion dragon martial artist to the ground. Even a tall mountain would have been destroyed by this kind of power. However, in the sacred tower of the flaming dragon, the tower made of ancient wood did not even tremble a little. Kang Xinmu did not think too much about the sturdiness of the sacred tower of the flaming dragon. Instead, he flew forward and wrapped his whole body with pitch-black devouring power, completely trapping the illusion dragon martial artist on the third level. The devouring power continuously eroded into the depths of the illusion dragon martial artist's body. The illusion dragon martial artist no longer had the ability to resist. The first move did not kill Kang Xinmu, which meant that Kang Xinmu had a high chance of turning defeat into victory. The fourth level. Kang Xinmu's eyes were filled with determination as he flew up into the sky. Ordinary dragon martial artists, even existences like the sacred dragon Shitao, who had made contributions and wanted to set foot on the same level as the Dragon King's inheritance blood, only needed to pass the 3 tests. If it were someone else, they would have already succeeded and left with great satisfaction. After all, to them, passing the 3rd level had exhausted all their strength. After all, very few dragon martial artists had devouring power like Kang Xinmu. Even some other special innate powers or nirvana powers did not have the same combat effect as the devouring power. On one hand, it could heal one's injuries and replenish the energy one had expended. On the other hand, it could increase one's resistance to the opponent's power. There was no other talent power with such an effect in the Dragon Emperor Empire. Of course, the Dragon Martial Continent was incomparably vast, and there might be talents similar to Kang Xinmu's. However, it was absolutely impossible for there to be a devouring power like Kang Xinmu's, which allowed him to increase the level of the Divine Dragon's inheritance blood essence by devouring the Divine Dragon's corpse. Once such a heaven-defying ability was exposed, Kang Xinmu would face endless killing intent. He stepped into the 4th floor. Kang Xinmu did not know that he had already embarked on a challenge that no one had been able to pass for over 100 years. On the 4th floor of the Flaming Dragon's sacred tower, the illusionary dragon martial artist that appeared in front of him was a 4th-level nirvana tribulation existence. Its strength was 50% stronger than the illusionary dragon martial artist on the 3rd floor. In other words, it was equivalent to 3 times the challenge on the 1st floor. 3 times the strength was not just the difficulty of the first 3 floors added together. Simply put, even if a dragon martial artist only used a third of his strength to defeat the illusionary dragon martial artist on the 1st floor, it would be impossible for him to defeat the opponent and pass the 4th test on the 4th floor. Kang Xinmu's face finally revealed a solemn expression. The previous 3 floors could only be regarded as an appetizer. The 3rd floor might be difficult for others, but for Kang Xinmu, it was just a little more than the limit. He had not used his true strength yet. But now, he had to go all out. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would fall into a state of failure. After all, he was not sure if the illusionary dragon martial artist on the 4th floor had some powerful origin dragon martial technique, or if it had cultivated the origin dragon martial technique to the heaven tier. These were all possibilities, so Kang Xinmu did not want anything to go wrong. Until now, Kang Xinmu did not know how much the divine dragon inheritance blood in his body could improve, but he wanted to challenge as many illusionary dragon martial artists as possible. Once he defeated them, the final harvest would definitely be more. Just as he stepped into the 4th floor of the Flaming Dragon's sacred tower, Dragon Emperor Yan, who was far away in the sealing dragon abyss, opened his eyes from his closed-door training. He nodded in satisfaction. To him, Kang Xinmu's talent was still relatively average. With enough resources, there were also many young geniuses in Yen Dragon Emperor City who could reach Kang Xinmu's current level of improvement. However, what Dragon Emperor Yen valued the most was Kang Xinmu's special talent. With that special devouring talent, how many floors could Kang Xinmu challenge in the Flaming Dragon's sacred tower? When Kang Xinmu stepped into the 4th floor, Dragon Emperor Yen sensed it. After all, the entire Flaming Dragon's sacred tower was his treasure, so he naturally knew the situation inside like the back of his hand. Indeed, the 4th floor did not disappoint me. However, the difficulty of the 4th floor suddenly increased. I hope you can give this Dragon Emperor a surprise. Dragon Emperor Yen was in the sealing dragon abyss, so no one knew what he was thinking. He had occupied the sealing dragon abyss, so naturally, he wanted to let the mysterious power in it affect him, so that he could improve his strength. Until now, his strength had increased to a considerable extent, which made him extremely happy. Naturally, he paid more attention to Kang Xinmu, who had discovered this place. In the Flaming Dragon Emperor dynasty, inside the Flaming Dragon sacred tower, Kang Xinmu was facing the Gale Illusion Dragon martial artist on the 4th floor. The other party was in the Nirvana tribulation realm, so his strength was extremely terrifying. Although for the sake of fairness, this illusion dragon martial artist still did not have the power of Nirvana, the other party was using the origin source dragon martial technique, which was too terrifying. The challenge left behind by the super divine dragon, let me see how difficult it is. Kong Shinmu shouted, and the devouring power wrapped the black dragon's body, sweeping towards the other party. However, before Kong Shinmu could react, an invisible wind blade suddenly attacked from the front. This wind blade came without a sound, and Kong Shinmu had no time to react at all. He could only move his body slightly to the side as fast as possible. As a result, the invisible wind blade cut through his dragon tail, directly cutting off his black dragon tail. Ah! Kong Shinmu snorted angrily. He really did not expect the other party's attack speed to be so fast. This origin source dragon martial technique used the invisible wind blade to attack the enemy. The speed was extremely terrifying, and it was even silent. Ordinary dragon martial artists could not predict such an attack at all. It should be known that Kong Shinmu cultivated the chaotic dragon body, which was the origin source dragon martial technique. In the end, the other party directly cut off his dragon tail, without any pause. It could be seen that if he was slow in dodging, his head would have been separated from his body. However, since he was prepared, he would not be in such a hurry next. Chapter 4096. Jiang Shenwu immediately unleashed the void dragon, raising the sky break. Moreover, the devouring power accompanied this move and enveloped the body of the illusion dragon martialist. A terrifying power erupted at once. However, Kong Shinmu's dragon tail was severed by the opponent's origin dragon martial technique, and he lost the ability to fly. He fell toward the ground of the fourth floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. The illusion dragon martial artist did not know what mercy was, nor did he have any arrogance. As soon as the opponent saw that Kong Shinmu was injured, he executed the origin dragon martial technique again at the fastest speed possible. The invisible wind blade swept over in an instant, and a gust of wind forced the surrounding air to disperse. If he was as unprepared as before, Kong Shinmu would probably die under this move. Unfortunately, from the moment his dragon tail was severed, Kong Shinmu had already put up a 120,000 defense against the opponent's attack. Defend. The second-grade dragon martial technique, Martial Dragon Shield, and the dragon-grade dragon weapon, Halberd of Heavenly Saint, were executed at once. This time, the opponent's wind blade was finally unable to inflict serious damage on Kong Shinmu like the first time. Although the invisible wind blade directly broke the martial dragon shield and forced the halberd of Heavenly Saint back, it had already lost most of its power by the time it slashed at Kong Shinmu's black dragon body. Its sharpness could only leave an extremely deep wound on Kong Shinmu's body, and it was not enough to kill Kong Shinmu. At the same time, Kong Shinmu's void dragon sky-raising break had already bombarded the opponent's body, and the pitch-black devouring power corroded the opponent's body. It had already devoured a certain amount of the Gale talent power, and then transferred it to Kong Shinmu's body, allowing him to recover at the fastest speed. Right now, the most important thing was that his dragon tail had been severed, and he could not fly, causing his agility to be far inferior to the opponent. No matter what the opponent used, he could only take it head-on. Therefore, the first thing Kong Shinmu prepared to do was to recover his dragon tail. If an ordinary dragon warrior reached this level, their dragon tail would be chopped off in a single move and they would basically lose their fighting strength. However, Kong Shinmu relied on his devouring power and had the possibility of turning defeat into victory. As Kong Shinmu devoured his opponent's storm innate ability, his dragon tail was also regenerating at a rapid speed. Previously, his dragon tail had been chopped off, and people thought that he was going to be crippled. However, he quickly recovered. It was the same now. The devouring power devoured the opponent's power, allowing Kang Shinmu to quickly regrow his severed tail. However, the opponent's attacks on Kang Shinmu were far from stopping. One after another, invisible wind blades rained down from the sky, landing on Kang Shinmu's body. Even with the martial dragon shield and heavenly saint halberd's protection, Kang Shinmu's body was still suffering heavy injuries. Every time, he avoided the vital parts, and at the same time, used all his strength to regrow his severed tail. Finally, after the opponent launched another 3 attacks, Kang Shinmu's severed tail regrown, and his black dragon body once again soared into the air. Another invisible wind blade was directly dodged by Kang Shinmu's extreme shadow flowing light movement dragon martial skill, and he even got close to the opponent's body. Devour. The devouring power gushed out like a violent tsunami, enveloping the opponent's divine dragon body in all directions. The opponent's power was being devoured by Kang Shinmu at an even faster speed. At this moment, Kang Shinmu had devoured enough storm innate ability, and his divine dragon body's resistance to storm innate ability had become even stronger. Just the martial dragon shield and heavenly saint halberd were enough to offset the opponent's attack power, preventing the opponent from hitting him. Kill. The devouring power turned into shadow dragon teeth and rained down on the opponent's body. The opponent's strength had been devoured, and he was much weaker than he was at the beginning, losing the possibility of defeating Kang Shinmu. It could be said that Kang Shinmu could turn defeat into victory if he could survive this. The opponent's first move was indeed powerful, but it failed to kill Kang Shinmu. Then, Kang Shinmu could use the devouring power to defeat the opponent instead. The illusion dragon martial artist did not have the intelligence of a real dragon martial artist. Although he was strong, when faced with Kang Shinmu's cheat-like devouring power, he could only die with a grievance. Even so, Kang Shinmu still needed a long time to completely kill his opponent. The devouring power made Kang Shinmu lose the super tyrannical power to kill his opponent directly, but it gave him extremely terrifying toughness. He could not defeat his opponent in a short time. But he could constantly devour his opponent in close combat, slowly nibbling away at his opponent until he died. Almost an hour later, the Gale Illusion Dragon martial artist that was entangled by Kang Shinmu finally lost all its strength. Not to mention the Origin Dragon martial technique, it could not even release a wisp of the Gale power in its body. The entire body of the Gale Illusion Dragon had been torn to pieces by the devouring power, turning into pure heaven and earth energy that flowed into Kang Shinmu's body. The challenge of the 4th floor is already extremely difficult. If it wasn't for the devouring power that healed my injuries, would have failed long ago since I was seriously injured. The next 5th floor, the 5th test, will definitely be even more difficult. I can't hold back any more tricks. Kang Shinmu thought to himself. He knew that the toughest test was coming. In order to upgrade the Divine Dragon Inheritance Blood Essence from the Sky Dragon level to the Holy Dragon level, a huge amount of Divine Dragon Blood Essence was needed. This kind of essence was relatively easy to obtain in the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon, but it was basically impossible to obtain it after leaving the Sacred Tower. Treasures like the Dragon Chi Crystal only contained an extremely small amount of Divine Dragon Blood Essence. If Kang Shinmu wanted to rush to the Holy Dragon level of Inheritance Blood Essence, he had to pass the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon. Otherwise, he would always be that little bit away from truly upgrading the Divine Dragon Blood Essence. Although there was still the idea of going to the Divine Dragon Graveyard later, for Kang Shinmu, since the Sacred Tower of the Fire Dragon had come here, he must not give up this opportunity. He must grasp it tightly in his hands. Go! Kang Shinmu had just devoured the entire Gale Illusion Dragon, and his body was overflowing with energy. He was in peak condition. In this state, he flew straight to the 5th floor above his head. At the same time, he held the heavenly sacred halberd in his hand, which shone with a golden light. At the toughest test, he finally decided to fuse with the heavenly sacred halberd. In this way, he might be able to withstand the attack of the Gale Illusion Dragon martial artist on the 5th floor. After all, the opponent's first attack was definitely the most difficult for Kang Xinmu to withstand. In order to prevent himself from being killed in an instant, Kang Xinmu had already used all the means he had. Martial Dragon Shield. Chaos Dragon Body. Fusion with the Heavenly Sacred Halberd. Chapter 4097. Magic Crystal. Martial Dragon Shield. The Sacred Sky Halberd fused with Kang Xinmu, emitting a holy golden glow that attached to his pitch-black dragon body. With an unstoppable momentum, Kang Xinmu suddenly rushed to the 5th floor of the sacred tower. At this time, far away from the ceiling dragon abyss, Dragon Emperor Yen had a smile on his face. He really reached the 5th floor, but I wonder if he can successfully pass it? Dragon Emperor Yen had high hopes for Kang Xinmu. Now that he could feel the aura of the Gale Dragon on the 4th floor disappear, Dragon Emperor Yen knew very well that Kang Xinmu had passed the 4th challenge of the Sacred Tower. Next was the 5th challenge, which was also the most terrifying opponent in the entire Sacred Tower, the Star Dragon. In the past, Dragon Emperor Yen had challenged the Sacred Tower once, but he also lost to the Star Dragon in the Sacred Tower. Apart from him, the number of dragon warriors who could pass the 4th challenge in the history of Dragon Emperor Dynasty could be counted on one hand, and every one of them was a great figure. Today, Kang Xinmu's performance had confirmed to Dragon Emperor Yen that he was an absolute genius. But what kind of genius was he? Was he the same as Dragon Emperor Yen? Or did he surpass Dragon Emperor Yen? Dragon Emperor Yen didn't know this yet. He had to wait for Kang Xinmu to challenge the 5th opponent to find out. Inside the Sacred Tower of the Sacred Tower. Kang Xinmu rushed to the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower with endless momentum. As soon as he flew in, endless starlight flashed and appeared around his body. Starburst. This is the power of the stars. Kang Xinmu immediately realized that the opponent on the 5th floor of the Sacred Tower was definitely an illusion dragon warrior who had mastered some kind of star attribute power. However, Kang Xinmu, who had just flown into the 5th floor, was ambushed before he could even catch a glimpse of the other party. The power of the stars exploded around Kang Xinmu in an instant, and a terrifying force descended from the sky, sweeping over from all directions, completely surrounding Kang Xinmu. Such a terrifying power caused Kang Xinmu's divine dragon body to suffer terrible damage. His entire body was almost shattered by the power of the stars. The surface of the divine dragon body was completely attached to the power of the stars. The attached power of the stars was still corroding and burning the surface of Kang Xinmu's dragon body at a terrifying speed. After experiencing this star burst, Kang Xinmu finally saw his opponent. The Star Dragon. It was a starry divine dragon soaring high in the sky. Its body was 1,000 feet long, just like a dragon martial artist with inherited heavenly dragon blood. However, its entire body shone with dazzling starlight. Clearly, it was much stronger than an ordinary dragon martial artist with inherited heavenly dragon blood. Star Dragon? Kang Xinmu knew the power of the other party's talent. This was an extremely powerful power. Moreover, the opponent's star burst just now was a kind of source dragon martial technique that had been cultivated to the dragon level. Under this star burst, Kang Xinmu was seriously injured. Moreover, the power of the devouring power in his body was temporarily sealed by the power of the stars. It was completely blocked for a short period of time and could not be released. This almost put Kang Xinmu in a desperate situation. If he could use the power of devouring, he could slowly grind his opponent to death. But now, the opponent's power of the stars was so terrifying that it could actually seal the power of devouring in Kang Xinmu's body, making it impossible to use it. The most important thing was that as soon as Kang Xinmu flew up, the opponent struck first and sealed his power of devouring, making it impossible for him to fight back. Rumble. As Kang Shinmu was seriously injured, the power of the stars in the surroundings once again erupted. With a terrifying might, wave after wave crashed down on Kang Shinmu, as if it wanted to destroy Kang Shinmu completely. Kang Shinmu couldn't use the power of devouring, and there were only a few methods he could use now. Halberd of the Heavenly Sacred, break for me. Kang Shinmu's body flickered with golden light, and the power of the Halberd of the Heavenly Sacred erupted at this moment. Countless rays of golden halberd light emerged from his side, and then blocked the layers of power of the stars in the surroundings. At the same time, a void dragon condensed from the side and borrowed the power of the golden light from the halberd of the Heavenly Sacred. 8 golden dragon cannons blasted out in an instant. Void dragon raises the sky. It was the same source dragon martial technique, but in a situation where the power of devouring couldn't be used, it immediately stimulated Kang Shinmu's potential. Earth Grade. Originally, Kang Shinmu had just cultivated the void dragon raises the sky, but now, under the pressure of the terrifying power of the opponent, Kang Shinmu suddenly achieved a breakthrough from the human grade to the earth grade. The power of this move instantly became extremely terrifying. When Kang Shinmu's void dragon raises the sky burst out, the power of the stars in the surroundings was blown away for a moment, giving Kang Shinmu a chance to catch his breath. Devour. With this chance to catch his breath, Kang Shinmu finally released a part of the power of devouring, and once again bombarded the place where the star dragon was located with the power of the void dragon raises the sky. The power of devouring immediately shrouded the body of the opponent. Unfortunately, his opponent was simply too strong. Source Dragon Martial Technique, Defense of the Stars. A layer of defensive barrier of the power of the stars appeared around the illusion of the star dragon, blocking all the devouring power of Kang Shinmu's void dragon raises the sky. The devouring power wanted to devour the opponent's defense of the stars, but unfortunately, the source dragon martial technique was invulnerable. There was no gap between the fusion of power, and even the devouring power couldn't find where to start devouring. In other words, the opponent's source dragon martial technique had no flaws at all. This made it so that even if Kang Shinmu released the devouring power, he couldn't do anything to the opponent for a while. However, Kang Shinmu still gained something, and that was the power of the stars scattered in the air was still devoured by his devouring power, allowing him to slightly increase his resistance to the power of the stars. This gave Kang Shinmu hope of defeating the opponent, and the hope was very high. However, the next moment. Break of the stars. The power of the stars instantly condensed into a star, which rotated at a high speed on the 5th floor of the sacred tower of the fire dragon. The light blue brilliance of the stars illuminated the entire 5th floor of the sacred tower of the fire dragon. Immediately afterward, the star fell with a loud bang, smashing towards Kang Shinmu. With this move, the star condensed from the power of the stars completely filled the entire 5th floor of the sacred tower of the fire dragon. There was no way for Kang Shinmu to dodge, and he could only take it head-on. This is the heaven level of the source dragon martial technique? Kang Shinmu's eyes widened as he watched the giant star condensed from the power of the stars falling from the sky. He was a little shocked. Chapter 4098. Kang Shinmu didn't have any time to think. He could only use all the means at his disposal. The fusion of the martial dragon god shield and the heavenly saint halberd, under the eruption of the golden light, made Kang Shinmu's defense reach the strongest level ever. But even so, it wasn't enough. The destructive power of an origin dragon martial technique cultivated to the heaven level was absolutely terrifying to the extreme. If Kang Shinmu was careless for a moment, it was very likely that he would be killed by the other party's giant star. Void Dragon Sky Raising Strike. Kang Shinmu could only use this origin dragon martial technique and let it attack the giant star. A loud explosion sounded. All of Kang Shinmu's power poured into the giant star, but still couldn't break it. The Void Dragon's sky-raising strike only weakened it by 1/3, and the remaining 1/3 of the star's power finally fell on Kang Shinmu's body. Rumble. Kang Shinmu didn't have any power to resist. His whole body was blasted by the giant star into the ground of the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon's sacred tower, heavily smashing into the ground. The sacred tower wasn't damaged in the slightest, not even the slightest bit moved. But Kang Shinmu felt like his whole body was about to fall apart. Inside the body of the Black Dragon, the meridians, blood vessels, tendons, and bones ruptured layer by layer. Blood splattered everywhere. The star power had completely corroded his body, making every part of his body, every tiny part, carry the particles of the star power. These particles were still destroying Kang Shinmu's Black Dragon body at an extremely terrifying speed. But this situation made Kang Shinmu overjoyed. First, he didn't die. The opponent's terrifying Origin Dragon martial technique cultivated to the heaven level didn't kill him. He was still on the verge of death. Second, the opponent's star power had already corroded his body. For others, this star power was very likely to be the culprit that killed them, but for Kang Shinmu, it was something that could save his life. Devour. With such a fortuitous encounter between life and death, Kang Shinmu had no choice but to seize this opportunity. Originally, it was rather difficult for him to devour his opponent's cosmic energy to increase his resistance against him. After all, his opponent's defense was impenetrable, and his devouring power could only devour the scattered parts of his opponent's energy. But now, the other party's cosmic energy had invaded his body, becoming the best target for him to devour. Kang Shinmu's devouring power was fully activated. At the same time, he was also guarding against his opponent's dragon attack. In just a breath of time, Kang Shinmu had swallowed a portion of the star energy, and then transformed this star energy into the purest essence of his flesh and blood, healing most of his injuries. At the same time, his resistance to the power of the stars increased by a large margin. Although it was not enough to reverse the situation was already moving in a good direction. After the power of the stars invaded his body, it completely became his target to devour. However, after a breath's time, the other party's attack came again. This time, it wasn't the Origin Dragon martial skill that had been cultivated to the heaven level, but another move. It was also a heaven-level Origin Dragon martial technique. The power of the stars condensed into beams of light in mid-air, forming a light purple stream of light, like a meteor falling towards Kang Shinmu. Although Kang Shinmu was devouring the power of the stars in his body, he was still paying attention to the star dragon's movements above. At this moment, he wrapped his entire divine dragon body in a pitch-black devouring power at the fastest speed. Extreme shadow flowing light. The Super Dragon martial technique was displayed, causing his entire pitch-black dragon body to turn into a stream of light. This stream of light quickly flew up into the sky, brushing past his opponent's light purple stream of light. The giant star just now had left Kang Shinmu with no place to hide. But for this star-flowing light, Kang Shinmu was prepared in advance. He flashed away the moment his opponent released it, successfully and completely evaded his opponent's attack. Originally, after being bombarded by the giant star of the stars just now, the dragon martial artist would basically not have any strength to move. The opponent's star-flowing light had originally wanted to end Kang Shinmu's life. As a result, Kang Shinmu devoured the power of the stars that had eroded into his body, thereby restoring a part of his body, allowing him to display the key dragon martial technique. In the time it took for him to dodge the star-flowing light, Kang Shinmu continued to devour the power of the stars in his body, allowing his resistance to this power to reach a higher level. Moreover, the injuries he had just suffered had healed even more. The current Kang Shinmu was not far from his peak state. Although there were still some injuries left, these were insignificant minor injuries. Every battle was a torment for Kang Shinmu. Even though he had the terrifying ability to devour power to recover from his injuries, the pain he experienced was unimaginable and unbearable to outsiders. When his opponent's giant star fell just now, Kang Xinmu felt as if his entire body was about to fall apart. At that moment it was as if even his thoughts were about to stop. If it were not for his firm mind and strong willpower, he would have already died at the hands of the Star Dragon. Even if it was another dragon martial artist with the same strength and ability, they might not be able to persist for such a long time. Kang Xinmu continued to devour the power of the stars in his body, turning this power into energy within his body. This scattered power of the stars was no longer under his opponent's control. Instead, it had become a captive of Kang Xinmu, staying in his body for him to devour and absorb. It was unable to cause too much damage to him. In other words, the damage that this power of the stars caused to Kang Xinmu's body was not as much as what Kang Xinmu could recover by devouring this power of the stars. After the star stream, the opponent's illusion, the Star Dragon, seemed a little surprised that Kang Xinmu had actually avoided its move. In fact, the Star Dragon was an illusion and had no emotions. Its battle was entirely based on its instincts. It instinctively wanted to kill any challenger who broke into the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. So when it saw that Kang Xinmu was still alive, its dragon martial skill was once again ready to be unleashed. The challenge of the Star Dragon on the 5th floor was something that even the Flame Dragon Emperor had not been able to challenge, which showed how terrifying the difficulty was. It was the same move from just now, the giant star. It was obvious that the illusion, the Star Dragon, had discovered that the star stream could not deal with Kang Xinmu at all. It could only use this terrifying dragon martial skill, which could not be avoided, to cause damage to Kang Xinmu. As the giant star in the sky gradually condensed, Kang Xinmu knew that another test had come. Next, this giant star would continue to condense and then bombard him, causing unbearable damage to him. Come on. At this time, Kang Xinmu had already devoured all the remaining power of the stars in his body, increasing his resistance to the power of the stars by a lot. Moreover, the injuries he had just suffered had completely healed. Chapter 4099. The giant star fell once again, and Kang Xinmu noticed that after this star fell and exploded, his opponent immediately started to condense another giant star. He was definitely planning to rely on the continuous bombardment of stars to kill Kang Xinmu here. However, compared to the beginning, Kang Xinmu had a certain understanding of his opponent's strength. Martial Dragon Shield. Kang Xinmu even let go of the heavenly sacred halberd, not allowing it to participate in the defense. He only displayed the martial dragon shield and then bombarded the giant star with the void dragon sky-raising break. Rumble. Once again, Jiang Shenwu's entire body was blasted into the ground of the ancient tree. Once again, his entire divine dragon body suffered the same injury as before. This time, Kang Xinmu didn't stop at all. He used his devouring power to devour the cosmic energy that invaded his body. The star energy that had invaded his body was like sweet dew after a long drought, or even a torrential downpour. If he didn't handle this rainstorm well, he would be completely destroyed. But if he handled it well, it would be the nourishment for his rise again. He continued to devour and absorb the cosmic energy, and the injuries he suffered were more or less healed in 3 breaths of time. However, at this time, another giant star had already condensed and crashed down on his location. Just now, I didn't use the heavenly sacred halberd and was able to withstand the attack of the opponent's origin dragon martial skill. Now that I've devoured more cosmic energy, my defense will definitely be stronger. Kang Xinmu was very confident in himself. While releasing the void dragon sky-raising break, he also fused it with the heavenly sacred halberd, using the golden light to defend against the bombardment of the giant star. Last time, he used the void dragon sky-raising break in conjunction with the martial dragon shield. This time, he he fused it with the heavenly sacred halberd to complement the void dragon sky-raising break. As a result, the defensive power this time would definitely be lower than the previous time. But the effect was the same. Kang Shinmu could also withstand the attack of the origin dragon martial skill. Because he had just devoured the star power, he already had a stronger resistance to the opponent's innate ability. In fact, Kang Shinmu didn't even want to completely block the attack. In that case, without the power of the universe corroding his body, where would he be able to devour the other party's power to recover? In the next moment, the third giant star exploded. Kang Shinmu's entire divine dragon body exploded. He rolled a few times on the ground and slammed heavily into the ancient wooden wall on the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. His entire body was covered in blood, and the faint purple power of the universe was embedded in his wounds. It was still continuously destroying his divine dragon body. Unfortunately, this time, Kang Shinmu revealed a confident smile. He had already won. The devouring power quickly covered his entire body and flowed out from his body, continuously devouring the star power that had invaded his body, turning it into the pure essence of life and flesh, and continuing to heal his injuries. This process could be said to be extremely painful, but in order to be able to devour more star power, Kang Shinmu chose not to completely defend against the opponent's origin dragon martial skill. Instead, he took the initiative to withstand the opponent's power. Although he was seriously injured, it allowed more star power to corrode into Kang Shinmu's body. This gave Kang Shinmu a chance to turn defeat into victory. Therefore, although the process was destined to be painful, he still decided to endure it, just to defeat the opponent in front of him and successfully challenge the 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. 3 breaths of time. There was only a gap of 3 breaths of time between each attack. The star power that Kang Shinmu absorbed and devoured was used to heal his injuries. He did not have enough star power in his body, and the Void Dragon Sky-raising break consumed an extremely high amount of energy. As a result, he could not use the Void Dragon Sky-raising break again to offset a part of the giant star's power. Therefore, he decided to use the Martial Dragon Shield and the Heavenly Sacred Halberd for defense. These two methods combined should be able to block half of the opponent's attack power. The injuries this time are likely to be more serious than before, but in order to conserve star power, this is the only way. But there is also an advantage to being more seriously injured. That is, more star power will corrode into my body. Kang Shinmu thought to himself. He raised his hand to form the martial dragon shield, and the heavenly sacred halberd's golden light also enveloped his body. The giant light purple star fell with a loud bang, heavily bombarding Kang Shinmu's body, and even completely enveloped his divine dragon body. The terrifying power wreaked havoc in the entire 5th floor of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Kang Shinmu's whole body felt as if it was on fire, and the pain of being torn apart constantly came from all over his body. Devour for me. The devouring power covered his whole body, and once again began to devour the surrounding star power. After this, he had a clear feeling that his resistance to the star power had finally reached a certain level. Not only that, but his injuries had all healed, and he had also devoured the remaining star power and transformed it into his devouring innate ability. My condition is completely recovered. Kang Shinmu, who had transformed into a divine dragon body, roared, and flew up from the star power flow on the ground. His eyes seemed to emit the color of cosmic energy. The power of the stars was burning in his body, causing his resistance to cosmic energy to reach a higher level. Moreover, his internal injuries and energy had all recovered. It was time to turn the situation around. The opponent was in existence at the 5th level of the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Although there was no Nirvana force in the origin dragon martial skill that he had cultivated to the heaven level, it was 5 times stronger than Kang Shinmu's talent power. But even so, Kang Shinmu had relied on various means to persist until now. For others, this was simply unbelievable and impossible. Even Dragon Emperor Yen had not been able to pass through this level back then, let alone others. But now, Kang Xinmu had withstood the Star Dragon's attacks again and again, and in the process, devoured and absorbed the opponent's power, thereby increasing his resistance to the opponent's power. At this moment, he had risen. In his peak state, Kang Xinmu's whole body was emitting the golden light of the heavenly sacred halberd, which once again merged with the dragon-grade dragon weapon. Void Dragon Sky Raising Break. Kang Xinmu began to fly towards the super-giant star that the opponent was condensing, and with the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, he attacked the opponent's giant star. The terrifying devouring power instantly destroyed the giant star that was condensing. The star power continued to flow, spread, and explode on the entire fifth level of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. But Kang Xinmu ignored the star power. Even if he had no defensive means, the star power could only tear a small wound on his body. Moreover, the star power was quickly devoured by Kang Xinmu and transformed into his own strength and the essence of his flesh and blood. Chapter 4100. The Star Dragon had fallen into a disadvantageous position. However, this illusory dragon warrior would not change its battle strategy because of this. To it, the best way to destroy Kang Xinmu was to use its terrifying means to constantly bombard him. However, it did not know that Kang Xinmu's resistance to the innate talent of the Star Dragon had reached an extremely high level under its constant attacks. Even the heaven-grade origin dragon martial technique could not cause much damage to Kang Xinmu. So much so that Kang Xinmu did not even need to use the martial dragon shield to resist the opponent's attacks. Under the attacks of the giant stars, Kang Xinmu continued to devour the power of the Star Dragon. After overcoming the most difficult stage at the beginning, Jiang Xinwu's chances of victory in this battle had finally been reversed. Kill. He finally soared into the sky. The devouring power all over his body turned into a shadow dragon skypropping breaker, which bombarded the illusory dragon warrior from all directions in the form of a black dragon cannon. The opponent's defense of the Star Dragon was still impenetrable, but Kang Xinmu was not in a hurry. In any case, the opponent could no longer pose much of a threat to him, and he could rely on the devouring power to continuously recover his injuries and energy. A stalemate. Kang Xinmu knew that it would be a long stalemate. He could not cause too much damage to the opponent, and at the same time, the opponent could not hurt him too much either. It could only cause him a relatively small amount of damage, but this kind of damage was nothing to Kang Xinmu. As long as he devoured the opponent's innate talent of the Star Dragon, he could recover from his injuries as quickly as possible and recover the energy he had consumed. Kang Xinmu could continue fighting, but the opponent's defense could only continue to be consumed and could not be replenished. However, Kang Xinmu soon remembered something. The reality was not as smooth as he had imagined. This was because he discovered that even though the illusion dragon martialist was constantly using cosmic energy, the energy within its body hadn't been exhausted in the slightest. The reason for this was that the illusion dragon martialist was the incarnation of the entire Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. As long as the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower existed, the energy within its body wouldn't be completely exhausted. This discovery made Kang Xinmu rather depressed. In other words, with his current offensive ability, he wouldn't even be able to grind his opponent to death. Unless he could destroy his opponent's Star Force defense in one fell swoop, if this battle were to continue, neither side would be able to do anything to the other. This won't do. I must pass this challenge. Kang Xinmu gritted his teeth and continued to attack. At the same time, he devoured the innate talent power of the star universe. To Kang Xinmu, the only way to break out of this situation was through the Void Dragon raising the sky. He had already cultivated this origin source dragon martial technique to the Earth grade, but its power was still unable to break through his opponent's cosmic force defense. Therefore, Kang Xinmu had to comprehend it to a higher level in order to have a chance of breaking through his opponent's defense. I'll try to comprehend it first and break through to the dragon grade. If that still doesn't work, then I can only try to break through to the heaven grade. No matter what, even if it takes a month, 2 months, or even a year, I must improve in this flame dragon sacred tower. Kang Xinmu had great determination in his heart. With a resolute look in his eyes, he began to enter a long stalemate with the star dragon. Even if the star dragon's various origin source dragon martial techniques were all cultivated to the heaven grade, they still couldn't cause fatal damage to Kang Xinmu. As time passed, Kang Xinmu's resistance to cosmic energy became stronger and stronger, and the more he wouldn't be broken by his opponent. But at the same time, Kang Xinmu couldn't do anything to his opponent. He had thought that he could grind his opponent to death, but the opponent's energy was obviously endless. The terrifying power possessed by the Super Shenron, and the Flame Dragon sacred tower it had built, was completely beyond Kang Xinmu's imagination. Even if he stayed here for a whole year, the power he could consume would probably not be enough to exhaust his opponent. Therefore, he could only defeat his opponent in one fell swoop and try to improve the attack-type origin source dragon martial technique that he cultivated. The stalemate between the two began. 3 months had passed. Dragon Emperor Yen had even returned from the Sealing Dragon Abyss to Yen Dragon Emperor City, but he still hadn't heard the news that Kang Xinmu had broken out of the Flame Dragon sacred tower. This made Dragon Emperor Yen, as well as many dragon warriors who were paying attention to Kang Xinmu, feel a little puzzled. Because they all wanted to know where Kang Xinmu had gone. In the Flame Dragon sacred tower, even if one failed and was killed by the illusory dragon warrior, it was completely an illusion. In the end, it would appear at the exit of the Flame Dragon sacred tower and announce that the dragon warrior had failed the challenge. But after Kang Xinmu stepped into the Flame Dragon sacred tower, only Dragon Emperor Yen felt that he had successfully passed the test of the 4th floor and reached the challenge of the Star Dragon on the 5th floor. After that, there had been no news of him. When there was someone in the Flame Dragon sacred tower, no one else could enter. Therefore, Dragon Emperor Yen still let people try to step into the Flame Dragon sacred tower. Unfortunately, no one had been able to step into it in the past 3 months. This made Dragon Emperor Yen even more curious. Could it be that Kang Xinmu had been in a stalemate with the illusory dragon warrior? This was the only possibility for such a situation to occur. However, Dragon Emperor Yen couldn't figure out how Kang Xinmu, a dragon warrior at the 9th level of the divine martial realm, could persist in the Flame Dragon sacred tower for 3 months. This wasn't a short period of time. Even he, Dragon Emperor Yen, couldn't fight for such a long time. The energy in his body had long been exhausted. It is said that what he comprehended is the power of devouring. Could it be that he will only be satisfied after devouring all the energy in the Flame Dragon sacred tower? Dragon Emperor Yen looked up information related to Kang Xinmu and knew that Kang Xinmu cultivated the original body-refining dragon martial technique. Moreover, he also cultivated the 2nd-grade dragon martial technique, the Dragon Martial God's Shield. Adding all this information together, it could be seen that Kang Xinmu's defensive ability was extremely terrifying. Coupled with the recovery ability of the power of devouring. Could it be that this guy was really in a stalemate in the Flame Dragon sacred tower? Dragon Emperor Yen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that the illusory dragon warrior in the Flame Dragon sacred tower wouldn't exhaust its energy at all unless the power of the entire Flame Dragon sacred tower was exhausted. However, the Flame Dragon sacred tower was a building left behind by a super divine dragon. How could it be exhausted by a boy at the 9th level of the divine martial realm? Not to mention a few months, even if it was 100 years or 1,000 years, it wouldn't be exhausted. The energy in the body of a super divine dragon, compared to the dragon warriors in the dragon martial continent, was completely endless. No one knew to what extent Kang Xinmu's battle in the Flame Dragon sacred tower had progressed. Chapter 4101. Time flew by. After the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty occupied the Sealing Dragon Abyss, the Dragon Emperor sent out a message for some of the more talented dragon warriors to go to the Sealing Dragon Abyss and stay there for a month. During this period of cultivation, under the influence of the mysterious power, they could directly increase their strength by at least 20%. Whether it was the innate power of the divine martial arts realm dragon warriors or the nirvana power of the nirvana tribulation realm dragon warriors, they could all be sublimated here. It was not to increase their strength, but to become stronger. Any power, after being affected by the mysterious power of the Sealing Dragon Abyss, would increase its power by about 20%. This was the effect that could be achieved by staying near the Sealing Dragon Abyss for a month. After the defeat of the Northern Chill Dragon country, it was said that the Northern Chill Dragon Emperor and the Yen Dragon Emperor had fought. In the end, the Yen Dragon Emperor defeated the Northern Chill Dragon Emperor and seriously injured him. Only then did the Northern Chill Dragon country finally give up on the idea of conquering the Sealing Dragon Abyss. As a result, the overall strength of the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty increased at an extremely fast rate. Shi Yueying, Jiang Liuxue, and even the holy dragon Shi Tao had all gone to the Sealing Dragon Abyss and experienced the baptism of the mysterious power. Basically, all the dragon warriors of the holy dragon level and above in the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty had gone to the Sealing Dragon Abyss. Talented junior dragon warriors like Shi Yueying and Jiang Liuxue naturally had such an opportunity. It was important to note that after experiencing the baptism of the mysterious power, the dragon warriors' bodies would have traces of this mysterious power. In the future, when they cultivated and improved their strength, they would also be sublimated by the mysterious power and improve their strength. In other words, as long as a dragon warrior experienced the baptism of the mysterious power, their strength would permanently increase by 20%. This was an extremely terrifying number. This was equivalent to the dragon warriors of the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty experiencing the baptism of the mysterious power, and basically, they could crush and defeat the dragon warriors of the same realm from other countries. The entire Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty was brimming with joy. Basically, every dragon warrior was excited about the opportunity to improve their strength. After all, there were not many opportunities to improve their strength, especially for existences like the holy dragon Shi Tao. It was most likely that they had not improved their strength for more than 10 years. Now that his strength had increased by 20%, how could he not be excited? However, Shi Tao was more concerned about something else. That was Kong Xinmu. Since the day Kong Xinmu left, he never appeared in front of them again. Almost a year had passed, and the news from the Yen Dragon Emperor was that Kong Xinmu was still challenging and training in the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon. Holy Dragon Shi Tao found Dragon King and asked him about the situation in the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. Dragon King also wanted to know why Kong Xinmu had not returned. After all, Kong Xinmu was a genius who had appeared in the dragon prison realm under his rule. If he died, it would be a pity. If he rose and became a strong expert, he would have another backer in the future. He told Shi Tao about the situation in the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, but he had only challenged the 3rd floor and did not know the situation in the next 2 floors. According to the news from the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty, it seems that Kong Xinmu may be able to pass the 5th challenge of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon. This is really rare. However, I did not expect this challenge to last for so long. Due to the matter with Kong Xinmu, the relationship between Dragon King and the Holy Dragon Shi Tao was getting better. Therefore, the Holy Dragon Shi Tao was likely to be qualified to challenge the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon after a period of time. It was a pity that the Yen Dragon Emperor's dynasty had already accumulated a lot of people who were qualified. Because Kong Xinmu had not come out of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, others could not step into the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon to challenge it. Some of those who could challenge the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon according to the qualification threshold set by the Dragon Emperor were basically waiting outside the Holy Tower for a year. Once Kong Shinmu came out of the Holy Tower, they had to be the first to step in. After all, only one person could enter the Flame Dragon's sacred tower at a time, and there were already 4 or 5 people who had obtained the qualification to challenge the Flame Dragon's sacred tower in the past year. They had to snatch the first spot after Jiang Shenwu came out. The earlier they entered the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, the better it would be for them to improve their strength. Otherwise, they would have to wait for others to improve before they could enter. How frustrating would that be? In any case, outside the Holy Tower, the 4 or 5 genius dragon martial artists who had obtained the Holy Tower's challenge qualification token were already quite displeased with Jiang Shenwu. These few were all existences who possessed the Holy Dragon's inheritance blood essence. As long as they passed the challenge of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, they could become Dragon King. This was a qualitative change, a fundamental improvement. However, because Kong Shinmu had been staying in the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon, they could not take this step. As time went by, this made the Dragon Emperor a little annoyed. After all, the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon was the foundation for the Dragon Emperor dynasty to improve. If the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon was occupied by Kong Shinmu, the other Holy Dragons could not be promoted to Dragon King. Then, the overall strength of the Dragon Emperor dynasty would soon be weakened. Although they had recently obtained the Sealing Dragon Abyss, if they did not have a way to promote a Holy Dragon to Dragon King, they would still suffer a considerable loss. 1 year limit. The Dragon Emperor finally ordered, giving Kong Shinmu 1 year is definitely enough. If he still cannot pass the challenge and come out, then I, the Dragon Emperor, will forcibly close the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon and teleport him out. With the Dragon Emperor's words, everyone was waiting for the arrival of that year. As the 1-year deadline approached, more and more dragon warriors gathered around the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon. They were paying attention to the situation here every day, hoping that one day Kong Shinmu would come out and let them see what level Kong Shinmu had reached. This Kong Shinmu is said to be extremely talented. He has already passed the 4th level of the Holy Tower of the Yen Dragon. He should be challenging the 5th level now. How can the 5th level be so easy? In my opinion, he must have used some method to be stuck in there. It is said that before he entered, he inherited the essence blood of the Sky Dragon level. It is really a waste for the Holy Tower to let such a person enter. Don't be sarcastic at this time. If not for this Kong Shinmu, we might not have been able to get the baptism of the mysterious power of the Sealing Dragon Abyss so smoothly. That's right. You have already been baptized by the mysterious power of the Sealing Dragon Abyss, right? You actually don't know how to be grateful. You are really shameless. Chapter 4102. Inside the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. On the 5th floor. Kong Shinmu had been in a stalemate with the Star Dragon for nearly a year. In fact, Kong Shinmu had even forgotten how long he had been here. He only knew that he had been constantly devouring his opponent's power to display the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, the Origin Dragon Martial technique. When he had cultivated to the human level and earth level, his speed had been very fast. However, when he wanted to upgrade the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break to the dragon level, the speed was extremely slow. It took him a total of 3 months to finally break through the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break to the dragon level. However, to Kong Shinmu's disappointment, even though the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break had broken through to the dragon level, there was no way for it to break through the Star Dragon's defense barrier of the illusion of the Star Dragon. The opponent's power came from the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. And Kong Shinmu's power came from the opponent. The opponent released it to kill Kong Shinmu, but in the end, it was all devoured by Kong Shinmu. To this day, Kong Shinmu did not even need to use any means. He could directly use his physical body to resist the opponent's attack, and he would not suffer too much damage. Only a small part of the star dragon's innate power would corrode into his body and become nutrients that he constantly devoured. With this star dragon's power, Kang Xinmu had actually been able to persist in the flame dragon's sacred tower until now. It has been almost a year, but in this year, I have been using the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, and I have already mastered this Origin Dragon Martial technique. It should not be far from the heaven level. Kang Xinmu thought to himself. If a dragon martial technique was cultivated to the heaven level, it would be possible to copy and carve out its overall structure, and then create a secret cultivation manual for the dragon martial technique. If it was an ordinary dragon martial technique, it would be fine, but the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break was the Origin Dragon martial technique, which was also what outsiders called a Grade 1 dragon martial technique. At the same time, Kang Xinmu's chaotic dragon body had also reached the edge of breaking through to the dragon level. If he had not devoured too much star dragon's power, the opponent would not have been able to cause too much damage to him, and his chaotic dragon body would have long been upgraded to the dragon level. At that time, Kang Xinmu would really be able to withstand the opponent's attack easily. This star cosmic dragon is too strong. I'm the only one who can fight for such a long time. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be worn down to death. Kang Xinmu shook his head. He didn't know how much time was left until the 1-year deadline, but he knew that he had to hurry up. This was because he had guessed that the Yen Dragon Emperor would not allow him to remain here for such a long time. In the eyes of the world, about a year was probably the most that the Yen Dragon Emperor could give him. Jiang Shenwu knew very well that the entire Flame Dragon Sacred Tower was controlled by the Yen Dragon Emperor. As long as the Yen Dragon Emperor allowed him to leave, he would definitely leave. At that time, he would only be able to obtain the Divine Dragon Blood Essence from the first 4 floors. Kang Xinmu had worked so hard until now, how could he be willing to give up? Thus, he executed his strongest move, the Origin Dragon martial technique of the Void Dragon Raising the Heavens Break. At the same time, the devouring force in his body roared and surged out. In fact, he had been working hard for a long time. Ever since his Void Dragon Sky-Piercing Break had broken through to the dragon level, he had been unable to break through the Star Dragon's defense. Thus, he had come up with this plan. After all, it wasn't easy to raise the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break to the Heaven Grade. Therefore, he kept using his devouring power to attach to his opponent's star power barrier. As the Void Dragon Raises the Sky attacked, the devouring power took advantage of the opportunity to devour some of the opponent's cosmic energy barrier. In this way, the other party's star force barrier was still in the process of slowly weakening. However, it was far from the level where Kang Xinmu would break through. Kang Xinmu constantly used all his strength to execute the Void Dragon Sky Raising the Sky Breaking Break. Normally, he wouldn't have wasted so much of the strength in his body. After all, executing the Void Dragon Sky Raising the Sky Breaking Break once would consume 1/3 of the energy in his body. Using it 3 times would deplete the energy in his body. However, his opponent was now constantly absorbing the power of the Sacred Fire Dragon Tower, which allowed Kang Xinmu to execute the Void Dragon Sky Raising the Sky Breaking Break every 4 or 5 breaths. Kang Xinmu had maintained this frequency for nearly a year. Now, he finally had a feeling that the Void Dragon Sky Raising the Sky Breaking Break would break through to the Heaven Grade. This was a feeling, a kind of intuition. At the same time, Kang Xinmu sensed that the Black Dragon's consciousness hidden deep within his body seemed to be leaking out more of its devouring power. This devouring power was a special kind of devouring power. This special devouring power would occasionally devour the power of the Void Dragon Sky Raising the Sky Breaking Break that Kang Xinmu executed. At first, Kang Xinmu found it strange. However, not long after, he realized that every time this special devouring power appeared and devoured the Void Dragon Sky Raising the Sky Breaking Break that he executed, his comprehension of the Origin Source Dragon martial technique would increase a little. Although it was just a little, it was equivalent to at least 10 days of comprehension. With the help of this special devouring power, Kang Shinmu was finally able to touch the heaven-grade level of the origin source dragon martial technique. However, he always felt that something was missing from the heaven-grade void dragon sky raising the sky-breaking break. It was a crucial thing. Without this crucial inspiration, he would never be able to break through to the true heaven-grade level of the origin source dragon martial technique. On this day, after another special devouring power appeared, Kang Shinmu's comprehension of the void dragon sky raising the sky-breaking break finally reached the limit. There was a bottleneck that prevented Kang Shinmu from breaking through the void dragon sky raising the sky-breaking break to the heaven-grade level. However, at this moment, the might of his void dragon sky-shattering origin dragon martial technique had finally reached a higher level. This level made his eyes light up. He had a very special feeling that if he executed the void dragon sky raising the sky-breaking break now, he would finally be able to break through the defense of the Star Universe Dragon. Kill! Kang Shinmu shouted. Almost at the same time, he condensed 3 pitch-black void dragons. These 3 void dragons released a pitch-black light cannon with devouring power at the Star Universe Dragon at the same time. A total of 24 pitch-black lights landed on the illusory Star Universe Dragon. The void dragon sky raising the sky-breaking break had been executed 3 times at the same time. This was what Kang Shinmu had comprehended so far. Basically, very few people could obtain this kind of method. One had to be extremely familiar with this kind of dragon martial technique or even be close to the heaven grade in order to obtain it. But now, Kang Shinmu was familiar with the void dragon sky raising the sky-breaking break. After nearly a year of continuous training and breakthroughs, Kang Shinmu had mastered this origin source dragon martial technique to an extremely terrifying degree. He was only one bottleneck away from the heaven grade level. Finally, there was a loud and crisp bang. Chapter 4103. The defense of the Star Dragon was eventually broken by Kang Shinmu. However, this did not mean that Kang Shinmu had defeated his opponent. This was because the light of the power of the universe continued to flicker on his opponent's body, and he quickly condensed another barrier of the power of the universe. This made Kang Shinmu almost die of anger. He had finally broken the barrier of the power of the universe, so how could another barrier be condensed? I have to devour the power inside the Star Dragon. The energy it uses comes from the sacred tower of the Fire Dragon, but there is still the essence of life and flesh in its body. If I devour the essence, I can weaken it. Kang Shinmu knew very well what his chances of winning were. Therefore, he continued to display the Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break. The terrifying power of the Void Dragon Sky-Raising Break continued to erupt on the 5th floor of the sacred tower of the Fire Dragon. The defensive barrier of the Star Dragon was broken, and its attacks were not as fierce as before. This also caused the power of the universe that Kang Shinmu devoured to be a little less than before, and the number of times he used the Origin Dragon Sky-Raising Break was also decreasing. I can't go on like this. Jiang Shenwu's heart jolted as he thought of an idea. This was the first time he took the initiative to show weakness. He released the devouring power in his body and let a part of the power of the universe that he had devoured flow away. Then, he was bombarded by the opponent's giant stars, and his whole body was suddenly seriously injured. It seemed that because he was seriously injured, the Star Dragon became excited and continued to display its techniques. The power of the universe continued to condense streams of light and stars, bombarding the body of the seriously injured Kang Shinmu on the ground. Good. As expected, Kang Shinmu was pleasantly surprised. The opponent once again continued to attack, wanting to kill him and leave the sacred tower of the Fire Dragon. However, the devouring power that Kang Shinmu had just released was just right, so he would never be killed by the opponent's means. It also happened to lure the opponent to continue to display the dragon martial technique, thereby releasing more power of the universe for Kang Shinmu to devour. Devour! Kang Shinmu cried out in his heart. The pitch-black devouring power covered his divine dragon body, constantly devouring the power of the universe. This innate power of the universe was not used to increase his resistance against the power of the universe, but was used to restore the energy within his body, as well as heal the serious injuries within his body. In this way, Kang Shinmu would be seriously injured every time, but he would not be killed no matter what. Moreover, he would have enough energy to continuously perform the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, the Origin Dragon Martial Technique. Kang Shinmu executed 3 Origin Dragon martial techniques at the same time. Under the bombardment of the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break, the other party's astral energy barrier vanished again and again. Kang Shinmu took advantage of the moment when his opponent's Star Force barrier disappeared and before it could condense again to corrode his opponent's body with his devouring power. Although only a small amount of Star Universe innate ability could invade his body each time, as time passed, more than enough devouring power was accumulated in his body. One day, Jiang Shenwu finally unleashed the devouring power that he had been hiding for a long time. Devour! The terrifying devouring power engulfed the power within his opponent's body in an instant. The illusory star dragon, which was originally full of vigor and vitality, became dispirited and listless in the next moment. It could not even condense its Star Force barrier quickly. Kang Shinmu immediately followed up with the Origin Dragon martial technique, the Void Dragon Sky Raising Break. Die! The pitch-black devouring power turned into 24 pitch-black dragon cannons. As if summoned by the god of death, they landed on the body of the star dragon. After weakening his opponent with the devouring power, Kang Shinmu's attack landed on his opponent's body. His opponent was immediately unable to resist. The illusory star dragon finally began to decompose at this moment, turning into the purest spirit energy of the world. The spirit energy of the world was naturally recovered by the sacred tower of the flame dragon. However, as the body of the star dragon decomposed, Kang Shinmu raised his head and found that the sacred tower of the flame dragon had already reached the top floor. The 5th floor was the last floor. That's right. There's no point in setting up more floors, because on the Dragon Martial continent, basically no one can pass the 5th floor. Even I am just an exception. Kang Shinmu knew very well that part of the power he relied on already came from the Black Dragon's consciousness. This was not a power that belonged to the Dragon Martial continent. It was definitely a terrifying power that came from somewhere else. A beam of fiery light was finally emitted from the surroundings of the sacred tower of the flame dragon. It gathered and shrouded the place where Jiang Shenwu was. There seemed to be countless dragons flickering within the fiery light. However, they were all extremely tiny dragons. Divine Dragon Blood Essence. Kang Shinmu immediately understood what this was. He spread his arms wide and did not resist the brilliance of the flames that contained the tiny roaming dragons surrounding his body. A scorching heat instantly flowed along his body and integrated into the divine dragon blood essence in Jiang Shenwu's body. His bloodline was originally the inheritance blood essence of a heavenly dragon. But at this moment, after being burned and evolved by the scarlet flames, his divine dragon heritage blood essence finally underwent a transformation. It was as though he had devoured enough divine dragon corpses. That feeling was a feeling of metamorphosis, a feeling that he was about to advance. He was excited and excited. His continuous perseverance and hard work for this year had not been in vain. He finally broke through the 5th floor of the sacred tower of the flame dragon and obtained enough divine dragon blood essence. Advancement, breakthrough. Kang Shinmu felt the extremely obvious changes in his body. From the heavenly dragon blood essence to the divine dragon blood essence, for Kang Shinmu, this part of the advancement would require him to devour at least 1,000 Dragon King-level divine dragon corpses. In the entire divine dragon tomb of the Flame Dragon Emperor dynasty, there might not be so many Dragon King-level divine dragon corpses. But now, in this 1 year, Kang Xinmu had achieved this level of transformation. This was an astonishing transformation. He could easily feel that after he transformed into a black dragon, his body length continued to increase from 100 zhang. Soon, it reached 200 zhang, and then 300 zhang. In between, there was actually a span of 3 times. This was the divine dragon blood essence. The divine dragon's inheritance was divided into different grades, and the grades were very clear. A mortal dragon was 10 zhang, a true dragon was 300 zhang, a heavenly dragon was 100 zhang, and a divine dragon was 300 zhang. This was the change in appearance. At the same time, Kang Xinmu's physical strength had increased a lot. Most importantly, the strength of the talent in his body had increased by more than 3 times. My strength has skyrocketed. Kang Xinmu clenched his fists and transformed into a dragon again. This time, he became a giant dragon more than 300 zhang long. He was even more powerful than ordinary divine dragon powerhouses. In the next moment, he felt the surrounding flame power gradually dissipate. He seemed to have been transported outside the sacred tower of the flame dragon. Chapter 4104. Kang Xinmu had advanced from a sky dragon to a sacred dragon. This was practically reaching the heavens in a single bound. Some geniuses could obtain sky dragon blood essence directly from the coiling dragon pillar during the flame dragon ritual. However, sacred dragon inheritance blood essence had to be slowly accumulated from sky dragon blood essence. By collecting treasures of heaven and earth like dragon chi crystals, a dragon warrior's divine dragon blood essence could be upgraded. Although the speed was slow, it was still possible to upgrade a sky dragon to a sacred dragon inheritance blood essence after a few decades. For example, sacred dragon Shi Tao had obtained many opportunities to upgrade from sky dragon blood essence to sacred dragon blood essence. He had collected treasures of heaven and earth like dragon chi crystals, and it took him a full 25 years to finally upgrade. As for Kang Xinmu, it had only taken him a year. Training in the sacred tower of the fire dragon was extremely difficult for ordinary people. Furthermore, it was impossible for them to experience the tempering of the essence blood of the divine dragons in the sacred tower again in a short period of time. It would take at least 10 years before they could experience it again. In addition, too much essence was needed to upgrade from a sky dragon to a sacred dragon. Therefore, generally speaking, very few dragon warriors would challenge the sacred tower during the sky dragon inheritance blood essence stage. Even if they passed the 3rd floor, they would not be able to upgrade from a sky dragon to a sacred dragon. However, from a sacred dragon to a dragon king stage, the amount of divine dragon essence needed was not that much. Most importantly, from a sacred dragon to a dragon king stage, it could only be upgraded through the power of the sacred tower. Even dragon chi crystals were basically useless to a divine dragon blood essence dragon martial artist at the divine dragon level. Therefore, Kang Xinmu's current situation was the first in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at Kang Xinmu, who came out of the sacred tower with a sacred dragon aura. That black dragon body was more than 1,000 feet long, an existence that surpassed ordinary sacred dragons. Obviously, Kang Xinmu had actually challenged the 5th floor of the sacred tower. Dragon Emperor Yen was nearby at this moment. This person was a middle-aged man wearing a fiery red robe. At this moment, he was standing on top of a tall building in the distance. Behind him were 2 of the 12 flame dragon envoys. The 2 of them narrowed their eyes when they saw a pitch-black dragon coming out of the sacred tower of the flame dragon. Lord Dragon Emperor, this kid is really as expected. He actually broke through the 5th level of the holy tower of Fire Dragon. When he brought us to the bottom of the ice layer of the dragon's sealing abyss, I already felt that he was extraordinary. I didn't expect him to achieve such a magnificent feat." The two Yen dragon envoys looked a little incredulous at this moment, but it seemed to be within their expectations. They were originally quite optimistic about Kang Xinmu. Now, Kang Xinmu's performance could be considered to have verified their previous thoughts. This kid had the potential to become a super powerhouse. Unfortunately, now that he has become a holy dragon, it won't be so easy for him to reach the level of Dragon King. Dragon Emperor Yen shook his head. This may not be a good thing for him. The two flame dragon envoys didn't say anything. After all, this wasn't just Dragon Emperor Yen's judgment. Mainly, it was what they themselves thought too. The best time to upgrade the sacred tower of Fire Dragon was when the holy dragon reached the level of Dragon King. Now, if Kang Xinmu wanted to enter the sacred tower of Fire Dragon again, he would have to wait at least 10 years. During this period, the power in the sacred tower of Fire Dragon would not be able to refine his essence and blood. Unless he can step into the sacred tower of another country. One of the flame dragon envoys thought to himself. However, he couldn't say this out loud. Under what circumstances could Kang Xinmu enter the sacred tower of another country? There was only one possibility, and that was treason. Therefore, Dragon Emperor Yen definitely didn't want to see this happen. Let's go and welcome his appearance. Dragon Emperor Yen nodded in satisfaction at Kang Xinmu's appearance. I originally planned to wait a few hours before closing the sacred tower. I didn't expect him to come out in such a short time. As Dragon Emperor Yen flew towards the sacred tower of Fire Dragon, all the dragon martialists around him looked at him with respect and admiration. They only had respect for Dragon Emperor Yen. And Kang Xinmu naturally saw the three majestic figures flying over from afar. Dragon Emperor Yen is here. With a thought, Kang Xinmu reverted from his pitch-black divine dragon body to his human form. Even in his human form, the essence and blood in his body were still in a boiling state. The boiling divine dragon essence and blood in his body had elevated him from the sky dragon level to the holy dragon level. The refinement of his essence and blood in the sacred tower of Fire Dragon had increased his strength by several times. Therefore, even though he was only at the 9th tier of the divine martial realm, he could still easily win against an inheritor of the sky dragon essence and blood in the 4th or 5th tier of the nirvana tribulation realm. The opponent's nirvana power would be easily devoured by Kang Xinmu's devouring power. No matter what kind of nirvana power it was, as long as it wasn't as strong as Kang Xinmu's devouring power, it would be devoured. Now, Kang Xinmu's attention should be on opponents of the same level, and that was other existences with divine dragon essence and blood at the holy dragon level. Holy Dragon Shitao naturally couldn't be regarded as an opponent by Kang Xinmu because his cultivation level was too high. Even though they were both divine dragon essence and blood, Shitao's nirvana power could easily crush Kang Xinmu. However, in the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, those who could reach the divine dragon essence and blood of the holy dragon level were basically not young anymore. After all, advancing from a sky dragon to a holy dragon required a huge amount of accumulation. Even if a father wanted to collect all the treasures of heaven and earth like dragon chi crystals for his children so that his children could absorb the power directly, it was basically impossible because there were too few dragon chi crystals on the market. Generally speaking, in order to advance from a sky dragon to a holy dragon level, one needed many fortuitous encounters, and such fortuitous encounters were basically impossible to collect. Without any fortuitous encounters, it was impossible to advance from a sky dragon to a holy dragon level. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible to rely on dragon chi crystals. If there are no other junior holy dragons, my opponents will be those of the older generation. However, which of these older dragon martial artists isn't at least a nirvana tribulation existence? Kang Xinmu was a little distressed. However, since he had become stronger, he didn't need to think about who would be his opponent for the time being. In any case, he would treat whoever stood in his way as an opponent. Soon, the Dragon Emperor Yan brought 2 familiar Yan dragon envoys to Kong Shinmu. Congratulations, your divine dragon essence has advanced from a sky dragon to a holy dragon. You've challenged the Holy Tower's 5th level, which is beyond my imagination. You should know that even I didn't pass the test of the 5th level in the past. Chapter 4105. No one knew about such a thing. Not even the Yen Dragon Emperor had passed the 5th level of the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower. I have already accepted anyone who can pass the 4th level of the Sacred Tower as a Flame Dragon Envoy. As of today, there are a total of 12 Flame Dragon Envoys. Other than them, the rest can only barely pass the 3rd level. Dragon Emperor Yen said this to Kong Shinmu alone. Obviously, he did not want others to know about this. However, Kong Shinmu was already shocked. He did not expect that he could pass the 5th level of the Sacred Tower that even Dragon Emperor failed to pass. This makes me very curious. What kind of talent is your devouring power? Dragon Emperor Yen smiled faintly. But no matter what, it is the honor of our Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty to have a genius like you. Kong Shinmu, come with me. There is something I hope you can do. After saying this, Dragon Emperor Yen let Kong Shinmu follow him out of the Sacred Tower. After they left, the dragon martialists who had been waiting to enter the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower would naturally be able to enter. However, with the matter of Jiang Shenwu breaking through to the 5th level, no matter who entered the Flame Dragon's Sacred Tower in the future, they would probably want to try. Although they basically did not even have the chance to pass the 4th level, everyone always felt that their strength was tyrannical. This would not change. In fact, the number of dragon martial artists who could pass the 3rd level of the Sacred Tower every year was less than half of those who stepped into the Sacred Tower. In other words, their success rate was basically only 50%. If they could not even pass the 3rd level, then they would not even be able to absorb the essence of the divine dragon blood. It was basically equivalent to stepping into the Sacred Tower for nothing. This kind of thing completely depended on talent. Soon, Kong Shinmu followed Dragon Emperor Yen and stepped into the palace of Yen Dragon Emperor. This palace belonged to Yen Dragon Emperor alone. It was built on the top of a mountain near Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. It was surrounded by clouds and lightning. If not for Dragon Emperor Yen, Kong Shinmu would not have been able to come to this place at all. Arriving here, Kong Shinmu became a little vigilant. After all, he still had the aura of the Heaven Awakening Dragon. This devouring power probably came from the consciousness of the Black Dragon in his body. If this Dragon Emperor Yen wanted to take the opportunity to attack him, Kong Shinmu would not be able to resist at all. He could only escape by summoning the Heaven Awakening Dragon immediately. Of course, this possibility was not high. However, Kong Shinmu had to be prepared. He had no understanding of the Flame Dragon Emperor. Alright, now that we are here, I will tell you one thing. Yen Dragon Emperor Yan's tone became a little serious. First of all, our Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty is not considered a very strong dynasty in this dragon martial continent. Apart from our Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, there are a total of thousands of dragon emperors in the entire dragon martial continent. Each dragon emperor has his own country. Of course, there are also 2 or 3 dragon emperors, or even more dragon emperors, who work together to build a country. The overall strength of such a country is much stronger than the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty. Hearing this, Kong Shinmu was a little surprised. Although he had heard from the Heaven Awakening Dragon that the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty was not considered a strong dynasty in the dragon martial continent, he really did not expect that there would be thousands of dragon emperors in the entire dragon martial continent. If the territory of each Dragon Emperor country was as vast as the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, then how big would the entire Dragon Martial continent be? Originally, Kong Shinmu thought that the Dragon Martial continent was just a small place, like an isolated island in the vast sea, where super divine dragons and ancestral dragons could only stay for a while. But now, it seemed that the Dragon Martial continent was much bigger than he had imagined. In the eastern part of the entire Dragon Martial continent, which is also the area where our Dragon Emperor dynasty is located, there is a Dragon Emperor Academy. Yen Dragon Emperor Yen slowly said something that Kong Shinmu had never heard of before. Dragon Emperor Academy? Kong Shinmu was a little confused. This Dragon Emperor Academy, could it be that only experts of the Dragon Emperor level could step into it? Very soon, Yen Dragon Emperor Yen answered his doubts. Do you think that even I could not pass the 5th level of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower, but you could pass it, and that you are already a first-class genius in this world? Yen Dragon Emperor Yen chuckled softly. You don't ever think like that. That Dragon Emperor Academy is established to nurture the future Dragon Emperor, and the students are called Donghuang Yangwu Academy. In this Donghuang Yangwu Academy, every student can pass the 5th level of the Holy Tower. These words made Kong Shinmu even more shocked. He had originally thought that he could only pass the 5th level of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower with the Black Dragon's consciousness and devouring power. Apart from him, there should not be anyone else in this world who could do it, right? However, he did not expect the words of Yen Dragon Emperor Yen to be so shocking, and also made Kong Shinmu feel defeated. He had spent a whole year to pass the 5th level of the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower. If it was someone else who had passed the 5th level of the Holy Tower, wouldn't their speed be much faster than him? However, Kong Shinmu was not particularly discouraged. It seemed that there were many geniuses in this Dragon Martial continent, and there was even an existence like Donghuang Yangwu Academy. This would allow him to find a new opponent who could compete with him. When he came to challenge the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower, his understanding of the Void Dragon Sky-raising break was only at the level of the human rank. The reason why he spent a year inside was naturally because he needed to spend time to improve his understanding of the Void Dragon Sky-raising break. If he had reached the Earth rank before challenging the Flame Dragon Sacred Tower, he would not have needed such a long time. Moreover, after such a long period of challenge, his understanding of the Void Dragon Sky-raising break was already infinitely close to the Heaven rank. He only needed one last opportunity to achieve the Heaven rank Origin Dragon Martial technique. He had even cultivated the Chaotic Dragon body to the Dragon rank, allowing his physical defense to reach an astonishing level. Yen Dragon Emperor Yan's words ignited a considerable desire in Kong Shinmu. He wanted to go to Donghuang Yangwu Academy and challenge the stronger and more talented dragon warriors. However, Kong Shinmu did not know if Yen Dragon Emperor Yen would let him go to Donghuang Yangwu Academy. You can now go to Donghuang Yangwu Academy and become one of them. Chapter 4106. Kong Shinmu did not know how old the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty was. But he definitely knew that it was an honor to be qualified to enter Donghuang Yangwu College. Should I go there directly? Kong Shinmu was a little confused. He did not know how to get to Donghuang Yangwu College. After all, this was a territory he had never come into contact with. Even in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty, there would not be more than 10 people who knew about this. Don't worry. The Yen Dragon Emperor shook his head. I want to tell you about our Dragon Martial continent first. I'd like to hear the details. Kong Shinmu asked respectfully. Speaking of which, you seem to know that we are in the Dragon Martial continent? The Yen Dragon Emperor was a little confused and asked Kong Shinmu. I heard it by chance. I don't know where I heard it from. Naturally, Kong Shinmu could not say that he heard it from the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon. After all, the relationship between the Yen Dragon Emperor and the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon was very bad. If he told Kong Shinmu about the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon, it would not do him any good. Alright. The Yen Dragon Emperor did not ask further. Indeed, Although ordinary people did not know about the dragon martial continent, it was often recorded in some strange books. Therefore, many people knew about it. Of course, not many people knew about Donghuang Yangwu College. As for this dragon martial continent, it is said that it is the territory of a supreme divine dragon, the Dragon of Calamity. The Yen Dragon Emperor finally began to tell Kong Xinmu some secrets that ordinary people did not know. Dragon of Calamity? Supreme Divine Dragon? It was the first time Kong Xinmu had heard of these two names. The Supreme Divine Dragon is an existence above the Super Divine Dragon. Dragon Emperor Yen explained naturally, above the Dragon Emperor, the Divine Dragon's blood essence can be refined to the extreme and fused into one's own bloodline to become a Super Divine Dragon. This super mystical dragon's strength was 100 times that of the Dragon Emperor of the same realm. They were on a completely different level. It can be said that any super divine dragon has already transformed from a human into a dragon, a pure divine dragon. The goal of Donghuang Yangwu College is to cultivate more super mystical dragons. The reason why it's a Dragon Emperor student is that as long as you are qualified to enter Donghuang Yangwu College, you can at least achieve the level of the Dragon Emperor. So powerful. Kong Xinmu was a little shocked. He had never heard of these things before. Even the heaven-opening devil dragon had never mentioned these things. Kong Xinmu thought to himself, could it be that the heaven-opening devil dragon did not even know about these things? After all, he was a demon, and he had always lived in a remote corner like the Dragon Emperor Yen. The Dragon Emperor Yen and the other Dragon Emperors still communicated, while the heaven-opening devil dragon only interacted with the other demons for a while. Perhaps the demon realm really did not know about this. The dragon martial continent was incomparably vast. The Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty and the northern Chill Dragon country were considered remote regions of the Dragon Emperor kingdom. Nearby, there would also be places where demonic beasts like the heaven-opening devil realm lived. But in fact, the dragon martial continent was the territory of the Supreme Divine Dragon, the Dragon of Calamity. The Supreme Divine Dragon would naturally not cultivate powerful demons in their own territories. Therefore, it would not be easy for these demonic beasts, including the heaven-opening devil dragon, to know the truth of the dragon martial continent, because no one would tell them. Of course, their strength had reached the level of an ordinary dragon emperor. It was just that the heaven-opening devil realm was relatively remote, and no one would pay attention to them. The Dragon Emperor Yen and the other Dragon Emperors naturally wanted to get rid of them and occupy the heaven-opening devil realm. But it was obvious that they could not occupy so many demon realms by themselves. After all, the heaven-opening devil realm was only one of the demonic beasts' territories. If many demonic beasts joined forces, even the Dragon Emperor kingdom would not be a match. Unless the Dragon Emperor, who was even more powerful than him, came to help. However, why would he come to help? These were some of the things that Jiang Xinwu was thinking about. No wonder the heaven-opening devil dragon cared so much about the black dragon's consciousness, and wanted to please me so that I could help him after I rose. Kong Xinmu shook his head. The heaven-opening devil dragon had always been very good to him. If there was a chance in the future, it would not be a big deal to help him. The key was that Kong Xinmu did not have that ability. His strength was not even as strong as the heaven-opening devil dragon. How could he help them? As for the Supreme Divine Dragon, it is an even more powerful existence. Even the Super Divine Dragon, whose bloodline has integrated with the blood essence of the Divine Dragon, cannot compare to a single hair of the Supreme Divine Dragon. The Dragon Emperor Yen continued to explain. We have only heard of the Dragon of Calamity. When I became the Dragon Emperor and my potential was exhausted, the Super Divine Dragon descended and helped me expand the Dragon Martial Continent. He built the Yen Dragon Emperor dynasty and the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower for me to develop. Today, there is finally an outcome. That is, you are qualified to go to Donghuang Yangwu College and try to become the Super Divine Dragon. The Dragon Emperor Yen had basically said what he wanted to say. What he knew was only limited to what he had learned so far. But after listening to it, Kang Xinmu basically understood the general situation. The Dragon Martial Continent was just a place to nurture the strong. The entire Dragon Martial Continent was created to nurture the super divine dragon. How shocking was this? The originally high and mighty Dragon Emperor Yen was actually just one of the many Dragon Emperors, and he was considered one of the weaker ones among the Dragon Emperors. To Kang Xinmu, this was undoubtedly a huge blow. No matter what, you have to go to Donghuang Yangwu College. The Dragon Emperor Yen said to Kang Xinmu, however, it is not convenient for me to send you there personally. I can only give you a map. You can follow the map and go there yourself. Also, look, this is the seal of the East Emperor. Kang Xinmu followed the Dragon Emperor Yan's gaze and suddenly found that there was a rather complicated divine dragon seal on his wrist. This seal was a dragon's head. It was arrogant and had a shocking power. Where did it come from? Kang Xinmu did not know where this so-called seal of the East Emperor came from. Naturally, it is a gift from the Holy Tower of the Fire Dragon. The Dragon Emperor Yen smiled. In our Eastern Dragon Emperor Kingdom, as long as you pass the 5th level of the Holy Tower of the Fire Dragon, the seal of the East Emperor will appear on your wrist. All the dragon martial artists can use this seal of the East Emperor to enter Donghuang Yangwu College. I see. Kang Xinmu was secretly amazed. He did not notice when the seal of the East Emperor appeared on his wrist. Chapter 4107. The Sacred Tower of the Blazing Dragon, the Sacred Tower of the Northern Chill, and so on. The sacred towers were all created by the Super Shenron on the Longwu continent. Dragon martial artists who passed the 5th level of the Sacred Tower would have the seal of the East Emperor on their wrists. With that, they would be able to enter Donghuang Yangwu College. Of course, apart from Donghuang Yangwu College, the northern, western, and southern parts of the Longwu continent also had their own dragon martial academies. These dragon martial academies competed with each other, and they were the most transcendent existences on the continent. Kang Xinmu originally thought that the Super Shenron was only a legend. He did not expect it to be so close to him. If I go to Donghuang Yangwu College, I should have a chance to see the legendary Super Shenron. As for the Supreme Shenron, I probably won't have the chance to see it, Kang Xinmu thought for a while, but he was not discouraged. It was enough for him to have a springboard like Donghuang Yangwu College. In Donghuang Yangwu College, he should be able to obtain more cultivation resources, which would allow him to become stronger. When I go to Donghuang Yangwu College, I will definitely be able to become a Dragon Emperor. This is the most basic thing. However, I only have the inherited blood essence of a divine dragon, mainly because my cultivation level is too low. Kang Xinmu was still a little nervous. After all, his current strength was not weak compared to martial cultivators of the same level, but his absolute strength was definitely nothing in the entire continent. After all, he had not even reached the Nirvana Tribulation realm. Kang Xinmu, you can go do your own things now. When you are ready, it will be time for you to go. The Yen Dragon Emperor suddenly said to Kang Xinmu in a serious tone, when the time comes, I will prepare some gifts for you before I go. These gifts can help you improve your cultivation level. It is also the last thing I, the Yen Dragon Emperor, can do for you. Thank you, Dragon Emperor. Kang Xinmu respectfully bowed to express his thanks. He suddenly thought of something and asked, right, does His Excellency Dragon Emperor know anything about the Dragon Sealing Abyss? Dragon Sealing Abyss? It is said that you once stepped into the sealed Dragon Abyss. Also, your father, Jiang Zizai, that peerless genius, also stepped into that place and disappeared in the end. Dragon Emperor Yen frowned. Yes. Kang Xinmu was a little disappointed. To be honest, I originally thought very highly of your father. I once thought of letting him challenge the 5th floor of the sacred tower of Fire Dragon, but unfortunately, he disappeared before I could invite him. Dragon Emperor Yen shook his head. As for this dragon sealing abyss, I don't know much about it either. This place had existed a long time ago. In fact, in the beginning, there were even super mystical dragons that came down. In the end, even they could not see anything. I don't know what happened after that. This news surprised Kong Shinmu. Even super mystical dragons came to see the dragon sealing abyss? Kong Shinmu pondered for a moment. The power in the dragon sealing abyss came from the legendary ancestral dragon. Not to mention super mystical dragons, even the ruler of this mainland, the Dragon of Calamity, could not break the power in the dragon sealing abyss. As for what was the situation in the dragon sealing abyss and why it existed here, even Dragon Emperor Yen did not know, let alone the current Kong Shinmu. What a pity. If the black dragon's consciousness really came out from the dragon sealing abyss, I might be able to find out what this black dragon's consciousness is. Kong Shinmu shook his head. He wanted to find out about this, but unfortunately, he could not find anyone to ask. For a place like the dragon sealing abyss, it should be impossible for anyone to know the specific type of place in Donghuang Yangwu College. After all, no one had ever come to this place. In this war surrounding the dragon sealing abyss, Kong Shinmu had entered the dragon sealing abyss once. As a result, there was a mysterious power flowing out from the dragon sealing abyss. This surprised Jiang Shenwu a little. What was the specific situation? If he could step into the sealing dragon abyss again, perhaps, but he quickly shook his head. His father, Jiang Zizai, had warned him not to step into the dragon sealing abyss before he obtained the power of the ancestral dragon, or with the help of the ancestral dragon. He believed that his father would not deceive him. Since he said so, if he stepped into it casually, it was very likely that he would die or be suppressed and sealed inside. Otherwise, why was this place called the Dragon Sealing Abyss? If it were not for Jiang Zizai's power, Kong Shinmu might have been trapped inside and died. Now, you should go back to the dragon prison domain first. There is your family and people you care about there. Say goodbye to them and prepare to go to Donghuang Yangwu College. Yen Dragon Emperor said to Kong Shinmu. He waved his hand and sent him out of the palace on the mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, Kong Shinmu found that he had left the palace and returned to Yen Dragon Emperor City. 2 of the 12 Yen Dragon envoys appeared in front of him. These 2 people were still wearing black cloaks. One of them had a hoarse voice, but he was quite appreciative and expectant of Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu, let's go. Lord Dragon Emperor ordered us to send you back to the dragon prison domain. Thank you, both of you. Kong Shinmu nodded and thanked the 2. Then he began to think about what to do next. Before he set off for Donghuang Yangwu College, he definitely had to go to the Heaven Awakening Demon Realm. A year had not passed. The Heaven Awakening Demon Dragon should have gathered many treasures and prepared for Kong Shinmu. However, he should have received news that Kong Shinmu had not come out of the Yen Dragon Sacred Tower. Since the Heaven Awakening Demon Dragon wants me to help you, I hope he will continue to be so obedient. Kong Shinmu thought. Then, he had to return to the Jiang clan to have a look, as well as the Shi clan's mansion in the dragon prison domain. There were people that Jiang Shenwu knew there, his family, his friends, and his friends who had gone through thick and thin with him. Kong Shinmu wanted to bid farewell to everyone. Under the guidance of the 2 Yen Dragon envoys, Kong Shinmu's speed was extremely fast. In a few days, he had already returned from the Yen Dragon Emperor City to the dragon prison domain. From high up in the sky, he could already see the incomparably majestic and familiar dragon prison city. Countless dragon warriors soared in the sky, breathing in and out the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, constantly growing. Everything was thriving. Just as the scorching sun rose, under the bright light of the firmament, Every dragon warrior seemed to be glowing with a unique brilliance. They were about to leave. Kang Xinmu suddenly felt a little sad. He did not know how far away Donghuang Yongwu College was, but it would not be easy to go there and come back. I hope everything goes smoothly. Let's go see them first. Chapter 4108. Following the two flame dragon envoys, Kang Xinmu soon arrived at the dragon prison. Actually, Kang Xinmu was not very familiar with the dragon prison. He was only slightly familiar with Dragon Prison City. Soon, the three of them landed in Dragon Prison City. Seniors, would you like to come with me to the Shi clan residence? Kang Xinmu asked the two flame dragon envoys. The two flame dragon envoys were now completely covered in black cloaks that covered their faces. It was impossible to see what they looked like. However, Kang Xinmu knew that the two of them seemed to be ranked relatively high among the 12 flame dragon envoys. Let's go together. The two flame dragon envoys said indifferently and followed Kang Xinmu. We will follow the orders of the Yen Dragon Emperor. We will send you back and bid farewell to the others. At the same time, we will definitely protect your safety. After leaving the Yen Dragon Emperor's court, we can't always follow you. However, before that, we will not let anything happen to you. Although Kang Xinmu did not know what danger he would encounter in the dragon prison, since the other party had said so, it was better to let them follow him. Dragon King Qiu and Sacred Dragon Shi Tao are both on good terms with me. I shouldn't encounter any danger in the dragon prison. Kang Xinmu did not think too much about it. He immediately headed towards the Shi clan residence. Soon, he arrived at the Shi clan residence. Kang Xinmu had been to the Shi clan residence countless times. He had even cultivated and lived there for a long time. However, when he came to the Shi clan residence this time, the situation there seemed to be a little different from before. This was because the Shi clan's residence was actually very lively. This liveliness was a bit like there was some big shot here, causing countless people to discuss this. Even outside the Shi clan's residence, there were many dragon warriors watching, pointing towards the inside. When they saw Kang Xinmu appear, many people immediately lowered their heads and whispered to each other. Isn't that the so-called genius from a year ago, Kang Xinmu? He disappeared for a year and actually reappeared. This time, the Shi clan estate is in trouble. This time, Dragon King brought his son here to propose marriage, and the one he has taken a fancy to is the daughter of Holy Dragon Shi Tao, Shi Yueying. That's right, Quan Dragon King Zhao Wuwang. His son, Zhao Tianji, is rumored to have met the eldest miss of the Shi clan during his experiential learning. From then on, he continuously pursued her. Even after the genius Kang Xinmu disappeared for a year, even some of the elders of the Shi clan supported the marriage of Shi Yueying to that Zhao Tianji. Quan Dragon King? Hearing these discussions, Kang Xinmu finally knew what had happened in the Shi clan residence today. To be honest, he was a little surprised by this. He never thought that something like this would happen in the 1 year he was in the sacred tower of the fire dragon. However, his mood did not fluctuate too much. This was because he still did not know the exact situation. He would only be able to find out the exact situation after he stepped into the Shi clan estate. He took a step forward and headed towards the entrance of the Shi clan estate. Halt, this is the Holy Dragon residence. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. When the two guards saw Kang Xinmu, they immediately snorted coldly. It was obvious that they wanted to stop Kang Xinmu and the two flame dragon envoys from entering. This surprised Kang Xinmu. Logically speaking, the guards of the Shi clan estate should know him, right? Although he had disappeared for a year, the guards shouldn't have forgotten about him, right? However, the words of the flame dragon envoy reached Kang Xinmu's ears. These two people are not the guards of the Holy Dragon residence, but the guards of the Dragon King. They should have been brought here by the Dragon King. That's strange. This is the Shi clan estate, why is the entrance guarded by the Dragon King's men? Kang Xinmu frowned. If that was the case, it would be a little difficult for him to step into the Shi clan estate on his own. But now, the two people behind him were Flame Dragon envoys. Flame Dragon envoys, what kind of status did they have? They were the 12 most powerful and had the highest status in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court, apart from the Dragon Emperor himself. Other than the Dragon Emperor, there was really no place in the entire Yen Dragon Emperor's court that could stop them. Get out of the way. The hoarse voice sounded, but with just a raise of his hand, a terrifying force that could not be seen with the naked eye sent the two Dragon King guards guarding the entrance of the residence flying, and they fell heavily to the ground inside the residence. This domineering method made Kang Xinmu swallow his saliva uncontrollably. Even though he knew that the Flame Dragon envoys had a high status and were extremely powerful, he did not expect them to solve the problem so directly. However, they probably did not want to reveal their identities as Flame Dragon envoys. Otherwise, as long as they revealed their identities, the other party would not dare to stop them. Seeing the two Dragon King guards being sent flying, the onlookers outside the Shi clan estate were all astonished. They were originally thinking, what kind of changes had happened to Kang Xinmu when he returned after a year? It was said that this child was summoned by the Dragon Emperor. Since he had returned, his strength must have increased by quite a bit, right? Naturally, no matter how much the strength of the younger generation increased, it would be impossible for them to reach the level of many Dragon King experts. Therefore, they still wanted to watch a good show. They wanted to know what kind of conflict would occur between Kang Xinmu and the Dragon King's forces. Logically speaking, they felt that Kang Xinmu would definitely lose to the Dragon King. But from the looks of it, the two mysterious black-cloaked men behind Kang Xinmu were extremely terrifying. With just a wave of their hands, they sent the two Dragon King guards flying. Who were these two people? Could it be that the current Kang Xinmu had already reached an extremely high realm? This caused everyone to have doubts in their hearts. However, Kang Xinmu did not care if they were doubtful or not. He watched as the two Dragon King guards were sent flying, but he did not care too much. Although he did not know the exact situation of the Dragon King, just by looking at the entrance of the Shi clan estate, the Dragon King was guarding it. It was obvious that the Dragon King had come in a menacing manner with ill intentions. Kang Xinmu stepped inside. The two Flame Dragon envoys were like his bodyguards, following behind him. In fact, they were originally Kang Xinmu's bodyguards. Moreover, in the eyes of the Dragon Emperor, their status was not comparable to that of Kang Xinmu. After all, Kang Xinmu was someone who would definitely become the Dragon Emperor in the future. When they stepped into the mansion, the hundreds of people in the Shi clan estate turned around at almost the same time and cast their gazes on them. Who are you? A dignified and domineering voice came from a middle-aged man in a high position in front of them. When he saw Kang Xinmu step into the mansion, his expression was extremely unfriendly. Chapter 4109. Other than Dragon King Zhao Wuwang, there were a lot of people in the Shi clan's mansion. The people of the Shi clan's mansion were naturally among them. Furthermore, Kang Xinmu immediately saw Holy Dragon Shi Tao, as well as his daughters, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong. After not seeing them for a year, Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong had become even more beautiful. Their every movement carried a considerable amount of temptation. Their femininity was from the inside out, and they were no longer the young girls they used to be. However, Holy Dragon Shi Tao's situation didn't seem to be right. At this moment, he actually looked a little dispirited. His face was rather pale, as if he had been seriously injured. What's going on? Kang Xinmu frowned slightly. He roughly understood that something was wrong. However, he still wanted to size up the others present. No matter what, he had to figure out the current situation first. Dragon King Zhao Wuwang was naturally the one with the most authority. At this moment, he was standing in the middle of the crowd. At the center of the crowd, there were many experts from the Quan Long domain that he had brought with him. All of them had tyrannical auras, and it was obvious that they were much stronger than the Shi clan's mansion. Among them, there were even 2 powerful dragon warriors with holy dragon-level inherited blood essence. They should be the holy dragon experts of the Quan Long domain. Other than the holy dragon Shi Tao, the other elders of the Shi clan's mansion were all heavenly dragon-level inherited blood essence. Compared to the power of the Dragon King, it was like heaven and earth. In reality, that should be the case. After all, the Shi clan residence was just a holy dragon residence under the prison dragon domain. On the other hand, the Quan Dragon King was a super powerful being who was in charge of a dragon domain like the prison dragon king. He had passed the 3rd level of the Holy Dragon Tower and was a powerful being who had risen from a holy dragon to a dragon king. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was huge. Jiang Shenwu knew that the dragon domain was a dragon domain beside the dragon prison domain. The dragon domain and the dragon prison domain should not have interfered with each other. For some reason, this dragon king actually led people to dragon prison city? Also, where did Dragon King go? Kong Shinmu? Sacred Dragon Shi Tao and his 2 sisters and daughters stood in front of the main hall of the mansion. When they saw Kong Shinmu and the 2 mysterious black-cloaked men step into the mansion, they couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't expect to see Kong Shinmu reappear at this time. However, when they saw Kong Shinmu, they were not as surprised and delighted as Kong Shinmu had imagined. Instead, he looked a little flustered. This made Kong Shinmu feel a little touched. Clearly, Shi Tao and Shi Yueying were worried about him. They were afraid that Dragon King would view him as an enemy if he appeared now. After all, in their eyes, he did not have much power. Although he had disappeared for a year and had a relationship with Dragon Emperor Yan, it was impossible for him to surpass the Dragon King. Therefore, now that he had returned, they were afraid that Kong Shinmu would be targeted by this Dragon King. However, Kong Shinmu was not afraid. This was because he was now shouldering the mission that Dragon Emperor Yan had given him. The 2 flame dragon envoys behind him were also one of the 12 strongest people in the entire Yan Dragon Emperor dynasty, apart from the Dragon Emperor Yan. So what if he was the Dragon King? Even if 10 Dragon Kings were here, they wouldn't be a match for the 2 flame dragon envoys today. Kong Shinmu, hurry up and leave. Sacred Dragon Shi Tao was the first to shout in a low voice. However, he quickly covered his mouth and started coughing violently. It seemed like he was not feeling well. Kong Shinmu saw this and naturally couldn't leave just like that. His expression turned cold. No matter what, he had to find out what was going on today. Senior Shi, what's going on today? He glanced at the people around him and asked calmly, also, what's wrong with your body? As he spoke, he walked towards Shi Tao. Seeing this, Shi Tao was a little worried. Shi Yueying and Shi Yutong's faces were also filled with panic. Kong Shinmu, hurry up and leave. However, it was obvious that their words didn't have much effect on such an occasion. Father, this person should be Kong Shinmu. They called him out just now. A handsome young man with a dark look in his eyes stood next to the Dragon King and said softly to the Dragon King. Dragon King Zhao Wuwang's son, Zhao Tianji, was the young man who wanted to marry Shi Yueying. He was wearing luxurious clothes and had a dragon tooth on his waist. That was obviously a rather powerful dragon weapon. As for whether it was dragon grade or heaven grade, Kong Shinmu couldn't be sure. This is Kong Shinmu, the genius young man called away by the Yen Dragon Emperor? The Dragon King smiled faintly and glanced at Kong Shinmu and the 2 black-cloaked people behind him. He was a little confused about their identities, but he didn't pay too much attention to them. He knew that Kong Shinmu had been in the Holy Tower for almost a year without coming out. According to the joint petition of the other divine dragon experts, this kid should have been driven out of the holy tower by the Dragon Emperor. After all, no one wanted to see a kid in the 9th divine martial realm occupy a latrine without taking a shit. As the Dragon King naturally had a certain amount of connections in the Yen Dragon Emperor city, so he knew what was happening there. It was precisely because of this that he would directly follow his son's wishes and come to the Shi clan estate in the dragon prison realm to propose marriage for his son. Even if the other party was unwilling, with the influence of the Dragon King, he would definitely get what he wanted. There's no need to stop him. Let him come over. The Dragon King wasn't very sure what was going on with Kong Shinmu, so he couldn't go against him for the time being. He guessed that Kong Shinmu had been driven out of the holy tower of the fire dragon. But what if there was another possibility? The Dragon King wasn't that stupid. He waved his hand and asked the other people from the Quan Long Yu to make way. However, although the people from the Quan Long Yu made way, they still had disdainful smiles in their eyes. They obviously didn't think highly of Kong Shinmu. As for the two black-cloaked people behind Kong Shinmu, they were a little wary. After all, they seemed to be quite strong. Unfortunately, they couldn't see their faces. Seeing that they didn't stop him, Kong Shinmu passed through the courtyard of the mansion and went straight to the holy dragon Shi Tao. "Senior, what's wrong with you? Why is your face so pale?" Kong Shinmu hurried forward and supported the holy dragon Shi Tao as he asked with concern. Seeing that Kong Shinmu had already come over, it was impossible for him to leave even if he wanted to. The holy dragon Shi Tao couldn't help but sigh and said, "I was injured 7 days ago, and I haven't recovered yet. But you don't have to worry about me. Given the current situation, it's really, sigh." Chapter 41:10. Isn't the current situation pretty good? Dragon King Zhao Wuwang couldn't help but smile when he heard Sacred Dragon Shi Tao's sigh. He patted his son Zhao Tianji's shoulder and said, "Some things are easier to clarify when the parties involved are present. Shi Tao, am I right or wrong? Even if Kong Shinmu wasn't here, I wouldn't have married your son." Shi Yueying immediately withdrew her gentle gaze from Kong Shinmu and turned to Dragon King Quan. She said coldly, "Moreover, he's back now. If you still care about your reputation, you should take your son and leave this place now." "You can't say that." Dragon King Quan let out a calm smile. Now that the enslaved Dragon King is dead, the entire enslaved dragon domain is without a leader. It's obvious that a new Dragon King is needed. If you agree to this marriage, I, Dragon King, can even recommend you to Dragon Emperor Yen. Shi Tao, this is your only chance. You can step into the holy tower of the fiery dragon and obtain the essence of the Dragon King. Kong Shinmu was stunned when he heard this. Even the two fiery dragon envoys behind him were surprised. The Dragon King of the Dragon Prison. Dragon King Qiu was dead? This was a little unexpected. How did Senior Dragon King Qiu die? Kong Shinmu's expression changed as he asked Shi Tao. 7 days ago, when we were together. Shi Tao explained in detail. That day, a big demon invaded our dragon prison. Dragon King Qiu and I went to deal with it, but we fell into an ambush. Senior Dragon King Qiu was taken away and I was seriously injured. It was this Dragon King Quan who saved me. A big demon invaded? Kong Shinmu was stunned. He couldn't help but think of the heaven-opening demonic dragon. However, this probably wasn't the heaven-awakening devil dragon's doing. After all, the heaven-awakening devil dragon had always been rather peaceful. Most importantly, he definitely wouldn't risk coming to the Yen Dragon Emperor Empire to cause trouble. Did you find Senior Dragon King's corpse? Kong Shinmu asked again. No, I only saw Lord Dragon King being taken away by them. I didn't see them kill him. However, being brought to the demon realm, Lord Dragon King will definitely be in danger. Shi Tao's face darkened. He seemed to recall the scene when the Dragon King was taken away by the other party. In other words, Dragon King Qiu hasn't been confirmed dead yet. Kang Xinmu's face turned solemn. If that was the case, he could find a chance to ask the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon. However, the two Flame Dragon ambassadors were following him. It was impossible for him to ask the Heaven Awakening Devil Dragon. The most urgent thing was to solve the current situation. He raised his head and looked at Dragon King and his son Zhao Tianji again. He said with a solemn face, "Dragon King Quan, thank you for saving Senior Shi Tao from the hands of the big demon. However, since Shi Yueying doesn't want to marry your son, I'm afraid it's inappropriate for you to come here today. If you really want to thank my father, you should marry your daughter to me." Zhao Tianji sneered and stared at Kang Xinmu. "You are just at the 9th level of the divine martial realm. What qualifications do you have to criticize me? A brat like you, this young master can kill you in one move. If you know what's good for you, don't talk so much. I won't make things too difficult for you later. How can Shi Yueying be willing to marry someone like you?" Jiang Shenwu merely glanced at him before laughing with a disdainful expression. "Even though you've reached the Nirvana Tribulation realm, even with the addition of Nirvana energy, you're still inferior to me. If we're talking about strength, you should turn around and leave right now." Kang Xinmu could see that Zhao Tianji had inherited the blood essence of a heavenly dragon and was now at the 4th level of the Nirvana Tribulation realm. For Kang Xinmu, this guy was no match for him at all. Although he had the power of Nirvana, it was impossible for him to know any dragon martial technique. Compared with his opponent on the 5th floor of the Holy Tower, the Star Dragon, he was a little bit weaker. Needless to say, Kang Xinmu had been tempered by the divine dragon blood essence of the Holy Tower. The divine dragon blood essence in his body was already at the divine dragon level. If he fought with Zhao Tianji, it would be like bullying a child. But Zhao Tianji didn't know that. When he heard Kang Xinmu's words, he suddenly became furious. "Who do you think should leave with his head in his hands? Could it be that you have been soaking in water for the past year that your brain has rotted? Calm down, calm down." King Quan Long immediately stepped forward. He snorted coldly and said, "How did your father teach you normally? No matter what opponent you meet, there is no need to argue. Crush them with absolute strength is the way to go." "That's right." Zhao Tianji glanced at Shi Yueying with absolute confidence in his eyes. Then he looked at Kang Xinmu. "Kang Xinmu, do you dare to come out and fight with me? If you can win this fight, we will turn around and leave. But if this young master wins, Miss Yueying will naturally marry me, ha ha ha." "You think too much." Kang Xinmu shook his head. "Shi Yueying will never marry you today. You'd better give up on this idea. But there is no harm in fighting with you. But I will not gamble with someone else's happiness. That would be irresponsible to her, and also to myself. How about this, if I lose, I will teach you a second-grade dragon technique. How about it?" In this 1 year, Kang Xinmu had not only cultivated and comprehended the dragon technique. He had already cultivated the second-grade defensive dragon technique, the divine dragon shield, to the heaven level. This was the level that could be imparted to others. It was possible to copy the cultivation secret manual for other dragon warriors to practice this dragon martial skill. As soon as he said this, everyone in the surroundings was instantly shocked. Did he mean that Kang Xinmu had already cultivated a second-grade dragon technique to the heaven level? How was that possible? How old was he? For others, even if it was a 4th or 5th-grade dragon martial skill, they would need at least 10 years to have a sliver of a chance to comprehend it to the heaven grade. But now, Jiang Shenwu had actually cultivated a second-grade dragon martial skill to the heaven grade? Are you kidding me? Dragon King sneered. Do you think it's that easy to cultivate a second-grade dragon technique to the heaven level? Don't pester me endlessly. If you lose, Shi Yueying will have to marry my son. It's decided. Your son will see if it's a second-grade dragon technique that has been cultivated to the heaven level. Cut the crap and come forward. Kong Shinmu snorted coldly. He took a step forward and transformed into a dragon. A 300 zhang long black dragon appeared in the sky above the Shi clan residence in an instant. This scene immediately caused everyone around to be dumbfounded. Chapter 41:11. Divine Dragon, Inherited Blood Essence. At this moment, everyone in the Shi clan estate looked as if they had swallowed an egg. Their mouths were wide open and their eyes were wide open. They didn't dare believe that the situation before their eyes was real. Kong Shinmu, a young man with an ordinary heavenly dragon blood essence a year ago, was now a divine dragon inherited blood essence. What on earth did this kid experience in the holy tower of the flame dragon in the past year? Quan Longwang couldn't believe this was real. Dragon King Quan's son, Zhao Tianji, was also dumbfounded. He could not believe that Kong Shinmu had become a divine dragon inherited blood essence dragon martial artist. To their knowledge, the youngest divine dragon inherited blood essence dragon martial artist was at least 30 or 40 years old. How could there be such a young divine dragon inherited blood essence dragon martial artist? On the other hand, divine dragon Shi Tao, Shi Yueying, and Shi Yutong were all pleasantly surprised. To them, Kong Shinmu's reappearance was already very good, even though it was not the right time. But now, they had seen Kong Shinmu transform into a divine dragon martial artist. This made them realize that Kong Shinmu must have put in a lot of effort in the past year. Even if Dragon Emperor Yan had given him a chance, he must have put in a lot of effort to achieve such a breakthrough. Otherwise, wouldn't the Fire Dragon Empire be filled with young dragon martial artists who had inherited the Holy Dragon's blood essence? What's wrong? Didn't you say you wanted to challenge me? Now, let's fight. Kong Shinmu's loud voice echoed in the surroundings. Even all the dragon martial artists in Dragon Prison City could see this scene. A 300-meter-long pitch-black divine dragon soared into the sky from the Shi clan residence and challenged Zhao Tianji, the son of Dragon King Quan. This pitch-black divine dragon was beyond everyone's expectations. It was actually a young divine dragon martial artist who was only in the 9th tier of the divine martial realm. Zhao Tianji was shocked at first, but he quickly regained his composure. The blood essence of the divine dragon's inheritance is indeed powerful. I never expected you to have already reached the level of a divine dragon. Zhao Tianji snorted coldly. He raised his head and looked at Kong Shinmu in the sky. However, you are still at the 9th level of the divine martial arts stage, while I am at the 4th level of the nirvana tribulation stage. Zhao Tianji was in his 30s. It was indeed quite good for him to have such strength. Of course, compared to Jiang Zizai in the past, or even compared to Ji Yeshuan of the Ji tribe in the Dragon Prison domain, his talent was not too strong. However, his cultivation resources were abundant, and he had the guidance of the Dragon King's father, so his speed of improvement was naturally much faster than that of ordinary young dragon warriors. If you really want to compete with me, I, Zhao Tianji, will not disappoint you. Zhao Tianji snorted coldly. Then, his body turned into a blazing sun. His entire body suddenly exploded and flew up into the sky. Although his blazing sun divine dragon body was only 100 feet long, it looked 2/3 smaller than the black dragon Kong Shinmu had transformed into. However, the nirvana power lingering around his body, coupled with the decisive momentum of having passed the 4th nirvana tribulation, still made him look much more dazzling than Kong Shinmu in the sky. Although the level of the divine dragon's blood essence was very important, the cultivation realm was more important. When the cultivation realm was similar, the level of the divine dragon's blood essence would have an overwhelming advantage. But now, Kong Shinmu's cultivation realm was only at the 9th level of the divine martial arts stage. He had not even passed the first nirvana tribulation, nor had he obtained his own nirvana power from the nirvana tribulation. This made his battle strength inferior to Zhao Tianji's. But this was only the opinion of ordinary people. For Kang Xinmu, Zhao Tianji was not his ultimate opponent. He could even try to deal with someone at the 5th level of the nirvana tribulation stage. Of course, if it was someone at the 5th level of the nirvana tribulation stage, Kang Xinmu would be in more danger. It was very likely that he would be killed by the opponent. But to deal with a guy like Zhao Tianji, Kang Xinmu would not feel too much pressure at all. Of course, the opponent's strength was not weak. It was just that Kang Xinmu had transformed into the divine dragon's blood essence, and his strength was more than 3 times stronger than before. It just so happened that this was also the first battle after Kang Xinmu's divine dragon's blood essence was upgraded. For Jiang Shenwu, Zhao Tianji had come knocking on his door, which was also an opportunity. "Come on, let's fight." Kang Xinmu laughed. He had 2 flame dragon envoys behind him, so he was not afraid of Dragon King suppressing him. Today, as long as he defeated Zhao Tianji, the son of Dragon King, the opponent would have no choice but to retreat. Of course, what to do next could wait. Anyway, before Kang Xinmu left for Donghuang Yangwu College, he had to settle this matter. The devouring power suddenly bloomed from his dragon body. Phantom Dragon Tooth. Kang Xinmu launched the first wave of attack with the Phantom Dragon Tooth, which was a 3rd-grade dragon martial technique. This wave of attack was to test the opponent's strength, but at the same time, it was also to cover up his real killing move. This is a 3rd-grade dragon martial technique. It's a 3rd-grade dragon martial technique. Impressive. Zhao Tianji laughed heartily. He was extremely confident in his own strength. In the previous battle against the Northern Chill Dragon Country, he had also obtained many meritorious deeds. Therefore, he was indeed much stronger than ordinary dragon martial artists of the same age. Now, I'll show you the power of my green lamp. The power of the green lamp was the power of nirvana that Zhao Tianji had cultivated. Nirvana energy was the nirvana energy obtained from overcoming the nirvana tribulation. This nirvana energy grew and multiplied endlessly within the body, and it was an energy that would never be exhausted. Thus, it was called nirvana energy. Every dragon martial artist's power of nirvana was different. However, there was a certain connection between the power of nirvana and the talent of the dragon martial artist. When the dragon martial artist reached the nirvana tribulation realm, the power of nirvana would basically replace the talent. This was the case with Zhao Tianji. With a roar, the whole burning sun divine dragon suddenly burst out with a bright light. The power of the green lamp burst out from his body. It was like a small sun, burning with terrible heat. At that moment, the temperature suddenly exploded near Kang Xinmu. The technique that Zhao Tianji used was also a grade 3 dragon martial skill, Ardent Sun Explosion. Its power was extraordinary. Moreover, he had already cultivated it to the dragon level. Coupled with the nirvana energy, it produced a terrifying effect that surpassed the shadow dragon Fang transformation.